Okay, Steve. Okay. Let me ask you this question. Before you got involved with Scientology, if someone asked you how old you were, what would you have told them?
I would have said 28, okay. 29.
After you got involved with Scientology and you learned the truth, how old would you have told someone you were if you...
76 trillion years.
Okay.
Now, I should point out that that's 76 trillion Earth years. But there's different kinds of time. There's linear time, there's chronological time, there's three-dimensional time. On some of my auditing folders, they go back to quadrillions and quintillions of years, because there's a formula to convert that to Earth years. I just wanted to let you know so that there wouldn't be any problem with that.
Okay. Just as a way of our getting started, can you tell me some of the things that you've discovered about your history, both in this life and in your past lives, that came up in the course of your learning about yourself through Scientology?
Well, the first thing I discovered is that I was not a body, that I was a spiritual being, or a Thetan, operating a body. And once I had solid reality on that, I found out more about who I am, what I am, where I've been all this time, why I'm here. Much of the data that I know is in this library. There's a tape called The Roll of Earth, which talks about this planet as a prison planet, and that we are here because it's a dumping ground. We're the undesirables, and this is a place where no one else of any knowingness really wants to be, because it's really a place for undesirables, for nonconformists, for the artistic, for criminals, for deviants, you know, different things like that.
How was it that you came to learn about these things? What was the mechanism through which it happened?
Well, through auditing, through training, through data, listening to tapes, reading books, proving a lot of it out on the meter, having it proved out on the meter, having verified some things that I thought could really be. I mean, I never knew why I didn't like certain things in the physical universe. Certain images annoyed me. And
like what, for example?
Well, first, I'll give you the earliest example. When I was 6 months old, I refused to drink milk. And, of course, in those days, the milk was in glass bottles. They weren't in plastic bottles. And when I was 6 months old, I would take the bottle and smash it against the wall every time my mother would give me a bottle of milk. But yet I would drink apple juice, orange juice. I love orange juice to this day. But milk, smashed against the wall. And my mother eventually gave up. She went into apathy over it. She just didn't give me milk anymore because she didn't want to clean up the glass. But I often wondered how a 6-month-old child who couldn't even speak yet would know to that extent why milk was so bad. And I found out in Scientology that I had been poisoned by a wife who gave me milk to drink, and it was poisoned milk. And that incident carried forward into this lifetime, and naturally I didn't want any part of it.
When were you poisoned?
I was poisoned, actually, you have to understand a little bit about time. And in order to answer the question,
tell us about time.
Chronologically, it was in time my last life, but it was actually 8 lifetimes ago. Because when you die and you drop your body, you do a shift in space to the between lives area, and you go through a series of very suppressive implants, which I can describe to you in great detail if you want me to. But I want to get to the point of what I'm saying. You know, then I can go back to this. It would be non sequitur if I did it the other way. Anyway, when you come back to the physical universe, you don't only do a shift in space, but you do a shift in time, and there is no guarantee that if you dropped your body in 1988, you would come back in 1989. You could just as easily come back in the year 1200 or the year 3000. Actually, there is a chronological time stream or range where the Between Lives area is set up where for 3,048 years in either direction, you could actually come back earlier or later. Or you could come back in simultaneous time where you could physically be operating two bodies at once without knowing it. Let's say you died in 1988. You could come back to life in 1962. And you could, for the period from 62 to 88, you're physically operating two bodies as a Thetan, but in your own time track, one is really before the other in sequence. But in the chronological time track, which has nothing to do with real time, you're physically operating two bodies. For example, when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, simultaneously someone else invented it in Europe. And when Bessemer invented the steel process, a guy named, I forget the name, but there was someone else who invented steel at the same time. I have it, it's in one of my books.
Book by whom?
By L. Ron Hubbard. And what actually was, these were the same person.
What they were the same person?
But operating two different bodies.
What book is it of Hubbard's that discusses this?
It's actually a tape. It's a tape called The History of Man, which I have. I know exactly where to find it on the cassettes. It's the third tape in the series called The History of Man. I know my library.
Okay,
wasn't I saying something before we did this? Oh yeah. So you could actually conceivably come back in a different time zone. So when I say it was my last lifetime when I got poisoned with the milk, chronologically it would have been because it happened in the 40s after World War II. I had been in the concentration camp. My name was Mordecai Kusvitz, and I lost 4 children. I lost my wife, and then I got married. I went after the war. I was the only one in the family that survived. I had a lumber mill in that lifetime in Poland, in Katowice, Poland. And I survived the war, and I went to Tahiti. And I met a girl there named Gabrielle Johannes on the island of Moorea. And she was much younger than me. I was like 53 at the time, and she was like in her early 30s. And she was unfaithful, and she poisoned me with milk. Now, you know, it's a funny thing. 3 years ago, part of my training in Scientology was to go back to that island and find this lady, who is now an old lady.
You found her?
And I found her.
You found what's her name?
I found Gabrielle Johannes. She was living in Papeete. And I found her, and I confronted her with this, and I said, you're not going to believe this, but were you ever married to a Mordecai Kusvitz? And she was like taken aback, you know. And I finally, after explaining what had happened, and I had been in Scientology, and this is what had been transpiring, she hugged me, I forgave her, and everything was fine. And now, I did a partial release on the lock of milk. Lock means, well, you know what that means.
Well, tell us.
Okay, well, when you have a lock, it's a chain of incidents. It's not like an engram because you're not feeling pain and unconsciousness, but just the very thought of milk turning me off. Like if I couldn't watch a television commercial for milk, because I would get physically sick. I would experience somatics. But now I can watch that commercial. I still won't drink the stuff, but I actually de-intensified the effect of the milk by actually confronting the incident.
Exactly how did you do that in that particular case?
In that particular case, by actually going back and confronting the death, confronting the place where it happened, and then confronting the murderer, the lady who did it, and forgiving her, and telling her, I'm still okay, and you're okay, and we're friends. It de-intensified the anxiety, shall we, I can use your language once in a while too, of the incident, and it reduced the charge. It reduced the charge of the incident. And, you know, it was a great thing to do. It was part of my handling in Whole Track was to go back and actually locate this incident, locate the person, de-intensify the charge on the incident, and that was a major breakthrough I had in knowing with total causation that I really lived before.
But there weren't a lot of things that had happened on the whole track you couldn't go back and actually confront in this
Of course
body.
not, but that you do it on a gradient scale.
Okay.
You do it on a gradient scale with current lifetime so that you could then not have to Q&A with the reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
You follow what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Now, but how would you de-intensify on things that had happened in past lives where you couldn't do it in this body?
You exteriorize.
What do you mean by that?
Look at this lawyer I got. You have to leave your body. You have to be outside of the body so that you can travel through matter, energy, space, and time, location, form, and event without the constraints, shall I say, of the physical body. Let me explain something to you about the physical body. You think you see through your eyes. You know something? Did you ever have a dream?
Yes.
Were your eyes open?
No.
Did you have pictures?
Yes.
What is that?
It's a dream.
It's a dream, but you're seeing things. You have visios. You have actual mental image pictures that you experience in your dreams. You don't need your eyes to see. If you could picture for a minute what it would be like I know, have reality, and when I'm outside of the body, I see 360 degrees around. I don't have to look with blinders. These two eyes are blinders. I don't have to look at you through two messed eyes. Messed is an abbreviation for matter, energy, space, and time, which we use in Scientology. You don't need these ears to hear. You just know that you can hear, and you hear.
How did you learn to go exterior?
Well, there's various processes that are.
Tell us about some of them.
Well, the easiest one is be 3 feet in back of your head, and know with stability that you're there. You also can hold all 8 corners of the room and don't think. That's another process. If you only see 4 corners, that means you're looking at them. But if you can hold them, physically hold them by putting out a beam, you see, and not just looking at them, but putting out a tractor beam or a pressor beam. You know, there's different kinds of flows. These are different flows that you can put out. And, for example, for one situation which is very easy to do, go down to any cemetery and put out a flow to someone trapped in their dead body, and you can actually get them on their way to the between lives area. Some people are so bad on confronting that they think that they are still their dead body. You go to a morgue. You can go into a morgue and look at all of these slabs of people lying in these you know, in the morgue, and all you have to do is get into communication with one of them, and they'll think God's talking, or they'll think all kinds of weird things, you know.
Have you ever done that?
Yeah, I have.
When did you do it?
Oh, I did that back in '83. I went with Bonnie Mott. We went to a morgue, you know, and we actually went there under false pretenses to identify someone, because it's hard to get into a morgue telling them that you want to spring people out of their bodies. But we did this as a drill, and she and I put out a beam, and she saw this beam.
Were you exterior when you did this?
Yeah.
You mean you weren't in your body?
Well, I was in my body, but I was vacillating out back and forth. I put the beam out, and then I had to get exterior to locate the beam so that it would get to the right place, because I had problems doing this while in the body.
How did you go exterior on that occasion? Do you remember? What mechanism did you use?
Well, I just located myself in space and time. I didn't. It's
okay. What you were going to say? It's what?
I'm sorry. Go on.
You locate yourself in space and time. See, there's one thing I have to explain to you that may help you understand, Mark especially, because you know all this. You're in your body, I'm in my body. You have your energy flows, I have mine. And we're in this space, but you're in your space and I'm in my space. But the thing that keeps us imprisoned is time. We are both in consecutive moments of now. And that's the key to exteriorization. Time. You don't have to be in now. You can be in then, you can be in to be, You don't have to be stuck in nowness. That's why Earth and this physical universe is a prison planet.
Can you exteriorize while you're sitting there talking to us?
Yeah, I just find it very awkward to be able to... I just would find it very awkward at this point because I'm not comfortable, you know.
Well, maybe later then.
Maybe later. But my question is, when you exteriorize, what happens to your body?
It stays where it is. I can talk through the body, but I can perceive different... In other words, the walls get very soft, like they're not there. You know, a lot of times I'll be sitting in this chair, and all of a sudden I'll get really frightened because I don't see this wall. I see the whole length of the next apartment. You know, and I've never been in that apartment. Never. But I know where everything is in there.
Do you?
Because I'll be sitting through, right here, just, I'd be reading a book. Of course, you know, I don't read anything else but LRH. And all of a sudden
LRH?
L. Ron Hubbard.
Okay.
And I'll sit here, and all of a sudden, I really lose it because I don't see this wall. I mean, I see a whole series of rooms, you know, and everything around me, including what's under me, and that's another thing. When you can actually see through the floor, and you're looking down 11 floors, you get really shaky because you realize you're only in up in space, and there's nothing holding you up here.
You were one time telling me that you could drive your car when you were exterior.
Oh, yeah, yeah. A lot of times, well, that's an automaticity. An automaticity is very simple. You set the body on automatic. When I do a wedding, I'm very rarely around.
What do you mean you're not around?
I'm not around. The body does the wedding, says the words, goes through the vows, and sometimes I come back to the body in the middle of the ceremony and say, what the hell am I, where am I? What did I say last?
Who got paid? You or the exteriorizing person?
The body got paid. The body deserved it. It worked. I didn't do a damn thing. But sometimes I'll be like in the middle of the ceremony, and all of a sudden I'll come back to the body because I was in Australia or somewhere, and I don't even know what I'm doing. You know, like I have to catch myself and like backtrack and see where we were. You know, where the body was. You know, whenever I say where we were to Dr. Geertz, he says, "Oh, that's schizophrenia," but it isn't. It's actually the Thetan and the body interacting. You know,
Dr. Geertz thinks you're schizophrenic.
That's unfortunately that's the kind of a doctor he is. But you know, in the average layman psychologist, I'm not putting you down, but I'm just saying the average WOG, you know, with WOG psychologist, I should say, would come to that conclusion.
What is WOG?
WOG is a acronym for Worthy Oriental Gentleman. I should bring my dictionary here. You're going to ask me a lot of questions, and I don't want to give you tech which isn't standard.
Tech? What's tech?
Technology.
That's your belief system?
Yes.
Yeah, don't worry about talking Scientology. If you want to use the vocabulary.
Yeah, but he's confused. You see, I'm giving him all kinds of MUs, and I'm going to.
I'll tell you what.
MUs?
Misunderstood words.
Okay.
And he'll soon be doping off. You know.
Well, but sometimes just run for a while with it. When Mark can't stand it anymore, he'll ask you for a definition. Maybe sometimes.
Yeah, ask me for a definition.
What does WOG? What does WOG mean?
A WOG is a pejorative term for like a non-Scientologist scum. You know.
Well,
it means worthy Oriental gentleman, but it also means the world operating genetically. That's the real definition.
Who is a WOG then?
Anyone who is not a Scientologist, anyone who is not aware of the fact that they're a spiritual being, operating a body rather than being a body.
So then am I a WOG?
Well, I hope you're one of the better ones.
Okay.
Presumably all WOGs, presumably all suppressives are WOGs. Is that right?
In order to be a no. Well, once you're a suppressive, you've been declared a non-Scientologist.
By whom?
But that's an interesting point. I never really looked at that before. That's like one of these syllogisms, you know, that you get when you study logic. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to look out for things like that in method, in word clearing, you know. When people do those generalities, that's a typical psych reaction, by the way.
Okay.
To give me a glittering generality like that.
Who would be a suppressive?
Well, if you hand me my Introduction to Scientology Ethics, I can read it to you, but I can tell it to you without it.
Tell it to us.
A suppressive is basically anyone who does not follow the 10 points of KSW, of keeping Scientology working. But more than that, not only not following it, but actually suppresses the Church of Scientology, suppresses a Scientologist's right to go up the bridge. It's anyone who commits a high crime or an act of suppression which results in real negative statistics for an org or for any of the dynamics, actually.
How vital is a Scientologist's right to go up the bridge?
Well, there's two rights that have been interfered with in the physical universe. And those two rights are the right to one's sanity and the right to leave the game. Did you know that? Have you heard that before?
Not the second one, no.
Okay. The right to leave the game. If a person does not want to be here, and if a person wants to go to... I hate when that happens.
Why don't we... Okay, let's go back to the question I think we were talking about before the phone call. I was asking you to explain the importance to a Scientologist of going up the bridge.
Well, the bridge represents the levels of awareness, knowing how to know. And at the top of the grade chart, you enter a phase where you are not dependent upon the physical body for any reason whatsoever. You operate by postulates. You say, let there be light, and there is light. In other words, that's a postulate. And you don't need any of the barriers of the physical universe in which to operate.
Now, is it you, or do you mean, when you say you in that explanation, you the Thetan or you the body?
No, we're talking the Thetan. Okay. The body is the genetic entity.
So the you in this...
There is no body you. You are not a body.
I understand.
That's the whole point I'm trying to make.
I understand. So that it's the Thetan that gains these abilities through the processing.
Yeah, the genetic entity is no different than a genetic horse or a cat or a dog.
Are these new abilities that the Thetan acquires, or are these old abilities that the Thetan always has?
These are exactly. They're old abilities that the Thetan learns how to reacquaint himself or herself with.
You mean I have these abilities?
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
Only
it's a matter of the fact that they're occluded. Your abilities are hidden. They're occluded because of all of the overts that you've committed along the line.
How did it happen that the Thetan lost the abilities?
Because the Thetan became the victim of his own trap. He built this trap called the physical universe because he wanted to create randomity. And he wanted to create, in other words, a big game where, picture yourself knowing everything there is to know and knowing how to know it, and there is an element of 2.5, which would be boredom on the tone scale. There would be an element of, well, we know all there is to know, so what else is there? So we created the element of being slightly unknowing in order to enjoy re-knowing. Do you understand what I'm saying? The purpose of setting up the physical universe the way we did was to create a game. But unfortunately, we created the game. It's like, there's a very good analogy. When they built the atomic bomb in the 40s, they didn't build the cure for the atomic bomb. They just built the bomb. And the same analogy, the way I learned it in training, is we built the body and the physical universe without the way to unbuild it or uncreate it. And that's what Scientology does. Scientology is the method of uncreating the physical universe, uncreating the mess that we're in. And it can be done in a variety of ways. one of them is uncreating time itself, because very few people realize that there's such an illogical thing happening here. We have three-dimensional space, and we only have two-dimensional time. That is totally absurd and ludicrous, because when you think about it, why should time be moving in one direction with consecutive moments of now? Why shouldn't time be moving in any direction you cause it to move?
If a Thetan regains its lost powers, what's it capable of doing?
It's capable of knowing, being, doing, and having whatever it wants.
Does it have power over matter, energy, space, and time?
That's one of the byproducts of regaining this ability.
So it could postulate whole universes.
Exactly. You can build your own universe. The PDCs teach you, the Philadelphia Doctorate course lectures teach you how to build a universe.
What do you mean by build a universe?
How to create your own universe. Forget about this one. You could postulate a universe and build it better. For example, in the PDCs, Ron talks about God's mistakes in creating the physical universe, if he in fact created it, which we know that he didn't. He created us, allegedly. That's the eighth dynamic theory. And, of course, it's also in my book of life, too. God created us as theta. In the book, I say as pure thought. And we built the universe, because, after all, if God is infinitely good and truth and love, why would he create a universe whereby every time we had to eat, some plant or animal would have to die?
How important is it to you personally to regain your Thetan powers?
It's the most important thing in my life. I would do anything it takes to do it. Anything. At this point, in fact, I found out that Cult Awareness Network has some hidden Scientology data. Are you aware of that?
No.
Well, I found out. I made some calls, and now I'm trying to. Of course, I'm operating as a squirrel, you know, obviously, because I can't do it standardly. But I have to get this data, no matter what it takes to get it.
What do you mean as a squirrel?
Well, a squirrel. Oh, I didn't bring my tech dictionary back down here. It's up there.
You know
a squirrel.
The definition.
A squirrel is a person who perverts Scientology, who alters the tech, and who tries to delve into offbeat practices which are not approved uplines by Scientology as what is standard.
Why are you a squirrel?
I'm a squirrel now because I can't go up the bridge, and I need to get the data. How can I go up the bridge now when I'm declared a potential trouble source?
What is up the bridge?
It's everything. Going up the bridge is Ron's streamlined gradient scale of awareness.
But what are the actual steps of going up the bridge? In other words, the steps you would like to be able to take.
Doing steps in being processed. You do the objectives, and then you do you go first through clear, and then you do the clear certainty rundown, and then you do the OT levels 1 through 8. Before you do clear, you do the NED, the New Era Dianetics levels. You can also, there's 2 alternates in that area. If you don't go clear on NED, then you can do the power processes. There's various methods. There is a grade chart which I can show you, which indicate the path to go up the bridge, and I can explain it to you if you like.
How far up the bridge did you go?
Through objectives.
That's all. You didn't do any of the OT.
I did it on the left side of the bridge.
On the training side.
Right. Right.
Do you know who Xenu was?
Xenu, no.
Xenu.
It doesn't ring a bell.
Never heard of the Emperor Xenu?
No.
Okay.
Nope. Who is he?
It's for me to know and you to guess.
Oh, I can look it up if it's here.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's in upper level materials.
How far up?
OT3?
Well, as I say,
what would happen to you if you were exposed to OT3 materials before you were ready?
That would be the end, basically.
What would happen?
Well, I'm told that if you see it, you could physically die. Your physical body could die.
Would you start freewheeling?
Yeah. Freewheeling or freeloading, and that's a joke in Scientology. You know what that freeloader is a person who leaves his post. No, I was told that if you see the wall of fire materials before you've been trained on the preps, then it's too unconfrontable to handle. At this point, I'm willing to take that shot.
And what happens to you? Describe what would happen if you started freewheeling, or if you saw some of this material when you weren't.
Well, you do a
prepared
bunk
for it.
to the between lives area.
Do a what?
You do a bunk to the between lives area, which means I wish you'd get the dictionary.
You need the dictionary?
No, I don't need it. I just want to tell it to you standardly.
Okay. I think you ought to have the dictionary if you need it then.
Well, I mean, I just don't want to. It's very important.
We'll get you the dictionary.
Technical dictionary, second shelf, 7th book over. Right. Left, 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 left. Right. Okay. 8th book, all right. Good. Yeah, I shifted the books the other day because I needed room for a check sheet. Okay. Doing a bunk. It's very important. That's when you leave the body and...
you don't want to go past a word you don't understand, do you?
That's right. I don't want any of us to have that problem. Mark doesn't realize the problem with that. The body collapses, the heart is still beating, the lungs are still breathing, because the genetic entity is running those, but the Thetan is gone. That's what we say colloquially, over the hills and far away, and he's now passing Galaxy 18. The person shoots out of his head and he's on his way. He hit the dispersal just adjacent to a ridge. That's doing a bunk. In other words, but it's worse than that if you see material of OT3. You would be the effect of everything negative in the between lives area. In other words, the wall of fire is... what? Okay. When I was in Denmark, in Copenhagen, I did I did training on the left side of the bridge, and part of it was confronting some of those materials, even though I wasn't processed up there. You see, you can go all the way up the left side of the bridge too. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Which means that you can
train your way through a co-audit up to the highest levels, which would be class 12 on the left side.
Which would mean that you could audit somebody
on OT7 completion.
A higher level than you yourself.
Exactly, because an auditor has seen you to a clear. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. But then how would it be that you could audit somebody on materials that if you saw, you would start freewheeling on?
When you're auditing those materials, you're able to confront them, because the auditing TRs, the TRs you use to audit them, get you to confront them.
Okay, can I just stop right here? I want to know a few things.
Yeah.
What do you mean by auditing?
An auditing process is where one person listens to the other person, and they go through a series of questions and drills in order to make the able more able. That's the basic definition.
The person asks you questions?
Yeah, they ask you questions which can be on a check sheet, but auditing is where you're causative. You don't really rely on the check sheet all of the time. You have to be able to produce an effect. The effect is getting to the person up to the next level. It's actually a process of getting the person through that grade.
Okay, but auditing is more than just asking questions, because you're on the cans.
The auditor is watching the reads of the person who's on the cans.
That's the E-meter?
Yeah.
And what's happening with the E-meter? Can you just explain that for Mark?
Well, the E-meter is giving you reads floating needle and rock slams if you have that. Different things can happen, you know. What would you like to know about the meter? Typically, in an auditing situation, you would be, let's say you were the pre-clear. You wouldn't see the meter.
This is an E-meter?
This is an E-meter. See? Say hello. That's when you do tone 40 on an object. You know that drill, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me have my microphone. Where do you... It's okay. Where do you get this E-meter from?
You buy it from any central organization.
Who makes it?
Bridge Publications.
I mean, Scientology sells it to you?
Sure. It's about $3,500.
This one that I'm holding?
Yeah.
It's called the
Mark Super 7.
Professional Mark Super 7?
Right.
Now, what do these things do?
Okay. I can explain it to you. This is your tone arm. Okay? This is the most important dial on the meter because it indicates whether a process is flattened or whether it has to be audited out until you get a phenomena where you go on to the next process. This meter is very, very unique because it gives you a digital read on the tone arm. You may not have even seen a Mark Super 7.
Haven't.
You've seen the 6, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This gives you a digital readout for the tone arm, which that does not do. Follow? Also, your needle is of a much better quality. The needle itself is calibrated better. You have, they even have a remote tone arm now, which I would love to get, but unfortunately they won't sell me one, you know. But they have a remote tone arm, which you can work from a different direction. The idea, of course, well, on the upper level processes, when you're exterior, to be able to use the remote tone arm would be a
You mean
great
when you're
advantage.
exteriorizing, when you're out of your body?
Yeah. You do solo auditing. When you do solo auditing, you don't hold the cans. You're holding them upside down, Mark. You don't hold the cans like this. You hold them like this with one hand, like this.
Yeah.
And you get your reads, and you write the reads down because you're auditing yourself.
Can you audit yourself for us right now?
Yeah, sure. What would you like to? What would you like to know?
Why don't you tell us about something?
I'd have to. He won't be able to see the meter when I'm doing this, though. You can.
Okay, I'll attest to what's on the meter.
Okay. Well, let me get it to the point where I see. When you audit yourself, you're setting it a lot differently from when you audit others.
All right.
Because, for example, here, shall I show you the? You know, you're skipping around. Shouldn't I show you how the meter works as far as you auditing me, for example?
Why don't you audit Mark?
Audit
that way the meter could be seen.
Could be seen.
Okay. I will hold the cans.
Like this.
Let me just get everything set up here. Hold on a second. Hold them. No, not like that. Each can, one can in one hand. Don't squeeze them too hard. Just a gentle squeeze. Hold on. Most men audit, by the way, at 2, and Mark's auditing. We're setting him around 2.4.
What does that mean?
Well, women audit at 3. You know that, don't you?
No.
Oh.
But I've never had any left-sided.
That mean I was
training.
a woman in a past life?
Oh, I think a lot of us have been.
Okay.
Okay. What were you just thinking about?
What?
What were you just thinking about?
Nothing.
You were holding a thought there, maybe. All right. Hold on. Okay, just stay there, right there. Okay.
Now, be careful. Don't ask him anything too embarrassing.
Oh, I'll ask you an easy question. Have you ever lived before?
I don't know.
He's telling the truth. It fell. The meter fell. In other words, I can show you. It went all the way to the right when he asked the question. Do you consider yourself to be a competent attorney?
Absolutely.
Good. Very well done. Is the sky orange?
No.
See where it went?
Except there's something I just noticed.
Yeah.
I squeezed the can slightly and it jumped.
Well, you're not supposed to do that.
But how do I know to keep the exact same pressure on?
When you said, is the sky orange, and you said no, it showed a lie reaction, because at the end of the day, the sky is orange. And it showed that you see, it contacts you as a being, not as a, it contacts not the analytical mind.
Contacts the...
I mean, it doesn't contact the, it contacts you as a being.
In other words, your Thetan.
The Thetan.
In other words, you're saying this has no scientific...
Oh, sure it does. You just lied without your knowledge, and it picked it up.
So if I lie without, if I do not purposefully lie,
you know what I'm
it tells me that I lied anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So if my subconscious knows that I lied...
It'll indicate it just like it did just now.
But you said it's not the subconscious.
Well, it's the Thetan. It's the Thetan. You as a being always knows what's real.
All right. Ask me something else along those lines.
Well, give me let's use one of my check sheets.
Why don't we show the meter to the camera, hold it up towards the camera.
Right. And then just ask a question so that
the camera can see.
Give me one of those check sheets.
Just ask a question. You know, and then we can do the check sheet in a minute. But just ask any question while the meter's to the camera.
Okay, well, just a second. Are you holding the cans the same way?
Yes.
No, all right. Hold on just a second. Okay. All right. What was that thought? What did you just think of?
God, I wish I could lose some weight.
You see what happened? As he thought of something, without me doing anything, the meter indicated a
thought?
A fall, yeah. Okay, let's...
But I'm always thinking.
All right, let me... now, try not to think of a pink elephant. You trying real hard not to think of a pink elephant?
Not at all.
See the reaction? Falling needle.
Now try manipulating the cans with your hands for a moment, Mark.
Wait a minute now. That's not right. Why would you want him to do that?
Because I just want to see the needle move in response to physical manipulations of his hands. That's all. Okay.
In other words, you're trying to discredit this meter.
No, I'm not trying to discredit anything. I just wanted to see it happen.
You believe the meter works?
Oh, yes. So then why would you want to tell him away any type of process that could throw the meter off?
Well, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Has it ever been explained to you in Scientology through your studies exactly how this works scientifically?
It's an electrogalvanometric response, which has nothing to do with moisture on your skin like a lie detector. It contacts the Thetan, the beingness, through the vessel that you're operating, which is the physical body.
But how scientifically does it? How mechanically does it do it? Well, let me ask you this. Why doesn't a lie detector machine...
Because that measures physiological responses like sweat. And the reason why a lie detector doesn't work is because when you finish telling a lie, you're still sweating. You don't start unsweating. Whereby, when you lie on this, the needle will have its reaction, and that's it. It contacts not you, but not you as a body, but you as a Thetan. Not the conscious level you.
So the way you find things out in Scientology is you get hooked up to this, you hold these two cans.
I hold the cans.
And somebody asks you questions.
Or I would audit myself. I can do solo auditing. I mean,
and that's how you find out about your past lives?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you get reads.
So from these cans and this machine, you found out about the experience you had with milk? Being poisoned by milk?
What are some of the other...
But I also have the mental image pictures, and I can contact those images.
What are some of the other events from your various past lives that stand out as most significant?
Well, how far back do you want to go?
Go back as far as you can.
Just give us your hit parade of the most significant...
Okay, the most significant event that I wrote about. In fact, I guess that would be the most significant event.
You're talking about a book you wrote?
I'm talking about a book that I wrote. The binder is falling out. You're not being careful with this, Mark. I told you not to be sloppy. Okay.
What's the name of the book?
The Holy Book of Life. And I found out who I was, and look at what you did here. All right, look. I just have to take better care of these things. Okay. The Holy Book of Life by Malchut the Antichrist. That is the most significant event on my time track.
Okay. Just tell us about that event. For the moment, put the book aside and tell us what you discovered. And in fact, if you can remember, it would be very helpful if you could explain how it was that
I learned the information.
What led up to
Fine.
it exactly?
There was an image, a mental image picture, which I found, which the auditor found, of this. The first scene I recall to do with this incident is where I was trying to reconcile an estranged, lost relationship. I hadn't seen this family member. At that time I didn't know it was my son. I hadn't seen this family member ever. But I knew where he was, and I knew how to reach him because I found out some of the things he was doing. And I confronted him with the fact that I was his father, and the image that I had, the mental image pictures, the first mental image pictures of this, was of this son of mine cursing me, beating me up, urinating on me, and exposing me to all kinds of degradation. And we went to the beginning of the incident, and we went back and forth, and finally I found out, the whole image came through very clearly, that I was Jesus Christ's real father. That I was a neighbor of his mother 4 houses down. And his mother was only 13 at the time. I was 16. And she used to go out in the morning at sunrise to bathe. And, of course, there was no indoor plumbing 2,000 years ago. And, of course, I had always found this girl very attractive and sensual. And, you know, one of the disadvantages of remembering your past lives is that when you find somebody in the past that means so much more to you than you have found in this lifetime seems very unreal. Have you ever noticed that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, the point is, Mary, his mother, was very, very sexy and sensual. And every morning I used to watch her bathe, hiding behind the bushes. And I would get very excited, and I would masturbate, you know. And this went on for like months, 7 months or so. And, of course, eventually she caught me, you know, doing this, and there was a big flap over that. But in the meantime, I made her pregnant artificially because the sperm, the semen, went through the bushes, through the water, about 4 feet away, and penetrated her. And when she found out she was pregnant, they had a doctor who examined her and to see whether she had been whether she had sexual intercourse, because that would have been grounds for a stoning, you know. And they found out that she was intact. Her hymen was still there. And of course, what happened? One thing led to another, and the family decided to make a big PR campaign out of this and blame it on God. They had this rabbi, Zacharias, who came up with the idea. But anyway, that is how Jesus was really born. But what happened was, I never really had a chance to meet him because when I confronted Mary with it before she had the baby, she denied the whole thing, and she was like very adamant about it and never wanted to see me again. But 30 years later, when he was preaching outside of the outskirts of Jerusalem, where I had moved to, I left that city, and I was in business there. I went to see him to tell him who I really was. We even looked alike. We physically, the mock-ups, the bodies looked alike.
Of Jesus?
Yeah, I looked like him. I'm just an older version of him. But he was so outraged. I think, in fact, I know he believed all the garbage, that he was who he thought he was, you know, the Son of God and all this other stuff. He was that deluded that I couldn't even go into a good ARC with him.
What's an ARC?
Affinity, reality, and communication, when you find a level of agreement. And consequently, he became really theta about everything, and he started to hit on me, you know, and he beat the hell out of me, really.
How many auditing sessions did it take before all of this emerged?
Oh, quite a few. I would say close to probably between 15 and 18.
Were they consecutive, or did this happen over a long period of time?
It happened over a 2-month period. It wasn't necessarily consecutive. We handled other things. And then we went back to this, because there was always charge on this incident.
But you keep going back to this with the auditor.
Oh, yeah. The auditor brought me back to the incident because it was so heavily charged on the meter. He was getting all kinds of weird reads. And it had to be flattened. And a lot of problems. For example, we started in this lifetime. We started, well, when I was 4 years old. Every time I used to see a church, I used to feel angry. I used to feel this intense anger, you know. And even after that, we're tracking backwards now. Originally, first thing I did wrong, I spit at a church, you know. And then there was such anger prior to that, and we tracked it back, and we found out, interestingly enough, not only was I his father, but that was my last lifetime. Last lifetime. As I told you before, the chronological time has nothing to do with real time. The time that I was in a concentration camp in Auschwitz, and I got out of there and I married this Gabrielle Johannes and got poisoned with the milk, chronologically was my last time, but that happened 8 lifetimes ago. My last lifetime in real time, in my real time track, which has nothing to do with your time track or your time track or the time track of anyone else, was this very, very pressing incident.
Which was?
Which was my being Jesus Christ's real father.
Is that why you had such a big charge on it?
Oh, yeah, because it was current. It was thoroughly into restimulation every time I would see a church or a crucifix or a picture of him, or an image of him, or an image of the scene or the condition or the incident. And I was like violently flung into stimulation like wherever I would go, because there'd be a church on almost every corner. You know, and this was really affecting my sanity. The fact that I had this intense charge on something I knew nothing about.
How aware of the restimulation were you before you came across his imagery? Quite aware of the fact that I would get like goosebumps and tremble and feel this hot and cold running flashes, you know, every time I would see a church. I could never confront going into one. I would go on these tours of these ancient churches, and I could never walk into one. And even with my parents, who were conservative Jews, and you know, and like they said it shouldn't mean anything to you because you're not a Christian. You know, why should it matter? Why don't you want to go into these churches? And I just said I can't go in there. I felt like I was not able to breathe. The minute I even came close to a door, and I walked into Arabic mosques, and I had no charge whatsoever. Walked into loads of temples. But the minute I got near a church, I got these terrible somatics all through my life. And in fact, you asked me before if about past lives. Yes, it comes back to me that I felt there was something there. I felt that there is some real serious overt, well, I'm using their words now, but okay. I mean, there was some real serious problem. And of course, the overt was fathering a person like that, because he was basically a terrorist. He was promoting these illusions of fear and death through the Bible. I mean, not through the Bible, of course, because the Bible was written after him. But the fact is, in his lifetime, he was like saying that the only way to reach God is through him,
and all of this stuff, and if you don't do it his way, you go to hell. There is no such place as hell. Hell is the between lives area and the mental image pictures within it.
Did you tell people in the Church of Scientology about these realizations?
Of course.
How did they react to them?
You mean you're talking about after they happened?
Yes.
I became an instant star. They said I was the one who was going to destroy the Christian church, and all of they were looking for me. In fact, I had to go to Flag for a special briefing because they found their guy. I mean, there's been other cases like that when they found Einstein, you know, and they found some other major people. And because very few people are important, and even that role would have unto itself been unimportant, but the fact is that the person connected with it was so important, and they found the real father of Jesus Christ, and they could prove it on the meter and show the world what stupid bullshit, pardon, oh, I'm on videotape, but...
It's all right. Okay. When did you go to Flag?
Oh, I went to Flag numerous times.
But for this
in connection with this incident?
Right.
In '85.
What is Flag?
Flag is the central organization of the upper levels of Scientology, where in other words, certain things can't be done other than in Flag. So I had to do my FPRD, you know, my false purpose rundown. Certain things had to be done in connection with this incident.
Okay. Once it had been revealed who you really were or who you had been,
yes,
what were the long-range plans? How were you going to be used?
Well, used sounds like I was being used.
Well, how was this fact going to be exploited? Put it that way.
At some point in time, when I got up to the level of awareness that they felt I needed to be at in order to confront this heavy charged area of the bank, I would come forth and show the world exactly what had happened in that particular incident. And it would be, at some point, in other words, plans were made by INT management to invalidate and strip, actually the word is to strip the false data from the Christian churches worldwide, planet-wide.
When would you be ready to have this happen?
As soon as I in other words, as soon as I accumulated $500,000 to go up to the top of the bridge, do my L's by a flag trained, by a class 12, and go on the ship, do Truth Revealed OT8 and OT9, which is now available. Did you know OT9?
OT9's out?
OT9, you know. Well, I got a letter the other day saying that they're about to release OT9. You know, I don't think it's really out yet. But when I would get to that point, then I would be able to operate without. I would be operating as a full OT. The OT8 is the first full OT level. Up to OT7 are the pre-OT levels. Are you aware of that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In order to handle anything of this magnitude, in other words, there is nothing of comparable magnitude out there that could be handled by a person stuck in a messed body. The way that I was told how this would be handled by Don Schwartz, I think his name is Don, his last name is Schwartz, the fellow from the Flag World Tour who talked to me about it. He's a tall guy, about 6'5", you know. His last name is Schwartz, and I know what he looks like. I have a Vizio of him now. But he said to me that this has to be handled when you are fully rehabilitated as a Thetan, because this is heavy-duty stuff. And you can't take on half the world, which is basically the Christian world, without taking on your bank first. Follow?
Yes.
But when you are at that point, look what a boom this would be for Scientology, because after all, when half the world realizes that their efforts have been misdirected towards faith in false data in Jesus Christ, where else, is what he said to me, where else have they got to go but to come to us? Do you realize what an FSM you're going to be?
What's FSM?
Field staff member, disseminating. What an FSM you'll be taking on half the planet. That was my mission.
So is it fair to say you would have made a major contribution to helping Ron clear the planet?
I would have cleared half the planet. Half the planet is Christian. Once I stripped away the false data of Jesus Christ on this beautiful machine, and it's provable because the data is there, then I was going to be the one to clear half the planet.
But in order to do that, you first needed to get $500,000 together.
I had to be trained not by the org, processed. I had to be processed not by the org where there are class 4s. You know, an org is a class 4 org, a local org. I had to be processed by class 12s at Flag. I was CS'd. That means the case supervisor found that there is no other way to get me fully hatted on my purpose in life than to get me trained by the best case-cracking 12s they have at Flag.
Who was the CS who found that?
Captain Mark Yeager at Flag. Captain Mark Yeager is the one who well, there was a big briefing at Flag when I went there, and all the big execs were there.
Was this a big brief just for you?
Yeah, just for me.
How many people were at this briefing?
4 or 5.
Do you remember who they were?
Miscavige. There's a fellow by the name of Miscavige.
David Miscavige?
David Miscavige.
Who else?
And Captain Mark Yeager and why? And Schwartz, this fellow Schwartz. And hold on, there's and there was a guy from OSA there.
Did all of these people know how you were accumulating the money?
Oh yeah, yeah. They obviously. I mean, the point is, they said to me, you've got to keep these stats going. You've got to keep these up stats going.
The up stats meant the money you were accumulating.
Doing this, never. When you have an up stat, you repeat the condition. You don't go into a lower condition by violating the conditions chart. Right there, there's a conditions chart. You got to read that. You know it.
I know it.
But when you're in power, when you've gone from screaming affluence to power, and the flows are coming in, and the money's coming in, and the thing is building, don't violate the power formula, because as soon as you do that, you're finished. Power change isn't even valid at that point. You are in power.
Okay. But in this meeting, this briefing that was held for you at Flag,
right,
at which David Miscavige was present,
right,
there was discussion of the way in which you were accumulating money. Is that
absolutely
correct?
They said to me, continue these cases. Continue working these cases. And in fact, don't, in other words, in fact, I forget whether it was Miscavige or the guy from OSA. The guy from OSA was the one who said, just as Flag auditing has to be flubless, your handling of this hat has to be flubless. There can be no more Q&A with you know, this was after I got divorced. There could be no more Q&A like with the ex-wife. There could be no Q&A with Mest. You have a hat, you wear it. You're doing this not only for Ron and for us, but to clear. You're going to be the one to clear half the planet. It's you, because not only have you got the ability to actually provide the wherewithal to fund the project as an FP, financial planner, but you are in other words, I was wearing all the hats. I was actually the reason why the tech was being done, so that when the funds were in, it would be me doing. In other words, instead of having 10 or 20 different people wearing different hats, I'm wearing a lot of hats, because it's going to be me who's going to come forward and prove to the world that I was the father of Jesus Christ. You realize what a big responsibility that is? You realize what an important Thetan I am? Because here, who else could do it? He only had one father. one biological father. He didn't have 20 fathers. In fact, they said that to me. They said, if he had 20 fathers, we could have a choice of who we can use, but you're the guy. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So when all of this thing blew up on 31 July, I decided I still have to do this. I have to do this anyway. Why do you think I put all of this together so quickly? Because the most important thing in my life is to clear the planet. And you can't clear the planet unless you strip away the false data about Christianity. Then after people realize that Jesus Christ was my son, where are they going to go but to Scientology? When they know from the Holy Book of Life that past lives are valid, that all of the processes I talk about in here, they can trace back to Scientology. Scientology is going to pick it up. They're going to pick it up, and they're going to clear the planet. And even if I'm PTS, or even if I'm an SP, Ron is going to know I'm the one who did it. Do you see how important my mission is even now?
Certainly. Yeah.
No matter what happens with all this crap with the case and with the government and with Kemp, I'm going to clear the planet anyway. You see?
Uh-huh.
I'm still wearing my hat.
That's right.
I mean, SP or SMSP, I'm still clearing the planet.
Well, you were at Flag on this time when you went there for the this meeting. Was there only one meeting, or was there more than one meeting?
Well, we had the major meeting.
It was just one major meeting.
Yeah, that was all that was necessary.
How long did you spend at Flag at that time?
Well, I stayed there for, I think it was 3 days, 2 nights.
And what did you do during those 3 days and 2 nights?
Well, you know how life is at Flag. You get into Flag and there are 3 people trying to get you to spend money, you know. You got regs all over the place. You can't even walk down the hall without hitting into a reg and going into a briefing, and I had CCHR regging, and I had, well, that was at the Psychbuster conference. All right, back in the first, I did the Psychbuster conference later on. You know, I was in that thing. I was one of the few invited.
Let's stay on this.
Okay, but you know, there were people who wanted. At that time, they were talking about the ship project. There was no ship then.
What year was this?
85.
Okay.
Oh, and at that meeting, they decided they're going to have to change a lot of facts around because they have to protect themselves. I mean, this was like this whole thing about. I was like a DSA. I was like. You know, they had just switched over, you know, recently from the GO. Remember when the GO?
Yes.
Well, when was the GO disbanded again? It was it 83 or 84?
Somewhere in that period.
Yeah, and they just started with formulating the OSA, the Office of Special Affairs. In fact, the only reason why they chose Fred Hare to be the mission holder of Fort Lauderdale, because Fred Hare used to run the GO, the Guardian's office. And Fred Hare, after they had trouble with Peter Letteries, they didn't want my stats to go down. When they, you know, I showed you some of the stuff on Peter that they...
Tell you what, let's stay with, just, let me ask you...
I mean, we're talking about big, exciting things.
Yeah, I understand it, but,
you know.
But let me just ask you one more question about this meeting, and then let's continue on talking generally about Scientology.
Right.
Obviously, I want to know what you're talking about, but not at this particular moment. What else happened that weekend? Tell me, just list the things for me that you remember about that.
Well, I had some sessions at Flag.
Okay.
You know, I had some auditing done, some sec checking. You know, naturally. There was another intensive, which I forget what it was called, but it was in preparation for this meeting. Like I had to earn my right to be there, really. You know. Okay. And there was a lot of that, and there was, and of course I love Flag. You know, I hung around the bookstore, and of course I was, at that time we decided the big game. The big game was to do this. I mean, this was done after that.
That's when that was decided?
Yeah, yeah. They decided that I needed to flow some funds back into the, as fair exchange. In other words, what I was doing at that point, the big game, that was the time the big game was decided upon, and I found that the big game was to be the first person. You see, I had to have a lot of other hats being worn at the time. So the big game was to be the first person on planet Earth to have all of LRH's data. Because how would it be if the person who's going to clear half the planet is missing data? Would that make any sense?
Was it after this that you first began this large transferring of funds to Scientology?
Well, yeah. Well, no, not. I was transferring funds all along for auditing, but not in the way we did it but afterwards. But we had to do it before in cash. But now we did it by check because I was able to buy products. You see?
Okay.
So once we got this going, they had me go to Europe, to Copenhagen. I did some co-auditing there too, as I told you about the Wall of Fire. And when I was in Copenhagen, I got a lot of missing tapes that they didn't even have at FLAG. My job was to comb every warehouse, to find every bit of data, and I helped the org in a way which you wouldn't even believe how I helped the org. You know what my capability is as an organizer.
Mm-hmm.
Every warehouse and stockroom of every major org was in shambles because of that. You know, when they had the problem with the GO and there was a lot of problems on the lines back in the early 80s, everything got screwed up. I'm the one who put every tape, every book in an organizational form. I organized Bridge, I organized FLAG, and I organized NEP. Did you know that?
No.
I organized their entire stockroom, warehouse.
Where were these places physically?
Well, the FLAG warehouse is a block north of the Fort Harrison Hotel and 2 blocks...
In Clearwater.
Clearwater. Bridge has a big warehouse in L.A., which is near the railroad track somewhere. I know how to get there. Of course, in NEP, they have a warehouse in Copenhagen, which is maybe about 3 miles from the New Era Publications main org, which is a competitive org of Bridge. You see, because of the LRH birthday game, which was started in '83, every org had to be competitive with every other org except for FLAG, because there was only one FLAG. You know, but like Bridge and NEP are competitors. So like we were playing a big game, who would have the most tapes to sell me? See? Mm-hmm. And I would be like, the first one who called me would have to be the one I'd buy them from, because it was like they've got to get their acting gear and find out what they have. So what I did is I went to Bridge, and then I went to NEP, and I basically cleaned every available tape out that I didn't have. And there are tapes that I still don't have. Then I entered into another big cycle in '86 where they were supposed to make, Gold was going to get involved. They were supposed to make every tape that I didn't have. And I gave them Golden Era Productions.
What are they?
They're the sound org. They're the ones who produce all the cassettes and they make the tapes. They duplicate the tapes. So what happened was, because Bridge and NEP got involved, Gold wanted to get involved. So when I got money from the cases, I got like about $85,000 in a short period of time. Fred, was it Fred or was it Peter? No, it was still Peter. No, it was Fred. That's right, it was Fred. He had just taken over. He said, we're going to give Gold a chance to play the birthday game. And what I did is I gave them all the money, and I said, just send me every tape that I don't have. And they said, you already have every tape that we have. Fine, let's make them. So like a big project was going to be started where they would actually physically put on reels tapes that were in archives, which I never even got to see. But the problem is they didn't do them. They didn't make the tapes. So that I became really RC broken at that point in my ethics. I was always being routed to ethics because, I mean, here I felt they were violating the game when I had done everything I was supposed to do. And it was like, it shouldn't have mattered because my bigger game was to clear half the planet. So I had like an ethics hang-up, which really got me stuck in '86, '87, and '88. That's basically what stuck me on the time track. And, I still say that they should have delivered what they promised because I wanted to be the first one. I was just playing the game the way we decided at FLAG when I had the big meeting.
The last time we talked, you told me about what you learned about the OT8 level. You want to tell me that again?
As far as being able to go there?
Well, how OT8 is done, where it's done, and what the effects
of
the
OT8 is truth revealed. It's the first level which a Thetan can operate on as an OT, as a full OT. It is given on the ship, which is called the Free Winds. And
it's a real ship? I mean a boat?
It's a real ship. It's a real boat, which is the place that Presley's daughter went on her honeymoon to do her levels. You know, you read it in People magazine. Remember? You told me?
Okay.
All right. So anyway, I was invited on the Free Winds to do some... in fact, had I not had the altercation with the government, I was scheduled to go to the Free Winds on October the 12th to do my Route to Infinity, Anatomy of Cause, and the Power of Simplicity courses.
What would those have cost?
Those 3 courses would have been about 10 grand. And it would have taken about a month. I would have spent a month on the Free Winds, you know. And I was so, you know, when I was coming back from Spain after I had visited the place where I was hung.
Hung?
I told you about that.
Oh, you mean when you were hanged in the past?
When I was hung in the 16th century in Malaga, Spain, why I didn't want to wear a tie. You know, I found out in my auditing that I didn't want to wear a tie because I was hung, and I wanted to get that, reduce and eliminate the charge on that incident altogether. And I went to the courtyard in Malaga, Spain, where they hung me, and I mocked up the whole visio of the hanging. I actually exteriorized and saw myself being hung, and I was back in the past, back there. I was the executioner. I was the victim. You know how to do a mock-up
Sure.
processing. You know, you have to be everyone that you see in the picture. You have to be every person, even the people throwing tomatoes at you, and be them, so that there isn't one element of reactive charge that could influence you after you fully EP the incident. You know, that means the end phenomena, when you bring the incident to a close. And I was, you know, I did this in Spain. I also did another thing in Greece prior to that, in Corfu. It was an incident. What?
What was that about?
There was another incident where I was raped once when I was a girl in the town of Paleokastrica, and I had to go through that incident as well. I did that the first week, and then the second week I went to Malaga, Spain, and all the charge. See, the purpose of that was that even though the incident with Jesus Christ was my last lifetime, there is also a parallel track that I had to handle, which was I was yes to handle every lifetime that occurred in chronological time since the year -22 BC, when I was born as Malchut, you know, and current physical time. So part of my handling was to go through and physically destimulate every lifetime that occurred on the chronological time track between that life and this one, which is why I had to complete those pretty severe incidents in Europe, you know. But here I was coming back on the plane, and I was thinking of how wonderful it's going to be. I'm going to finally get to the Free Winds, and you know, and then all of a sudden I was arrested.
Let me ask you this: what do they do on the Free Winds?
The Free Winds is the only place that delivers OT8. It isn't delivered at Flag.
Okay. Now, you told me about what the impact of completing OT8 is. Why don't you repeat it?
Okay. When you are an OT8 completion, you are not dependent upon the physical body to handle matter, energy, space, time, location, form, and event. If you want to spend the next billion years in a bubble of light, contemplating aesthetic beauty, you know, you've heard about the 9th and 10th dynamics. Okay, that's in a PDC tape. You could do that, but of course that's not really part of my game. My game was, and is, to clear this planet. And I need the power to have the ability to clear the planet. And
you mean to make everybody realize the truth? Is that what?
No, clearing is to have half the planet go exterior. The Christians who were stuck in these visios of the Between Lives area. And of course, you know, you have to understand a little bit about the time track of Christ.
Hold on a second. I'm going to take you back. Finish telling me about the OT8s.
Okay. Because I got to tell you about the time track of Christ too. You know, it gets into my case.
Finish the OT8s first.
Okay. On the ship, basically what happens is this. You're doing the OT8 levels, And your body, you're not in your body for a long period of time. I'm not talking about for an hour or two or even an intensive. You're out of the body for a long period of time. The body is actually hooked up to a life support system and is given fluids, and is like you would put a person in a coma on a life support system. And you are so individuated from the body, I mean, it doesn't matter that the body is laying there. You are the Thetan doing your OT8 level, not even anywhere near, remotely near the body. You don't even need that body to do that level. And you have no physical dependency upon the body when you do Truth Revealed. When you do Truth Revealed, you first go down to the course room, you get your OT8 pack, and that whole process takes maybe 3 hours. And then you do the level. And by doing the level means you're out of the body for as long as it takes to do the level. And some people have taken 3 or 4 weeks to do that level.
What do you do when you do the level? I don't understand.
Well, I haven't done the level, so I can't tell you. I haven't even been trained to audit anyone to do that level.
Has anybody explained what it is?
Well, yes. I went to the briefing that they had by OT8 completions. There was one there, one beautiful girl I fell in love with. Her name is Ivy Turnus. Are you familiar with Ivy Turnus?
No.
Okay. She did the OT8 levels on the ship. She was one of the first graduates, and she came down to Miami to talk to the upper-level Scientologists who were interested in going fully to OT8. And I was at the briefing, and she was just telling me about some of the things that they did. They were able to stop 104 wars on Earth just by postulate. It was at the time when there was this whole thing about the Iran-Contra business, and there was wars. There was the Libya thing. They stopped that. They stopped it all at once, and the next day, everything was fine. It was like everybody went into great ARC with everybody else, and like they diffused a bunch of wars. Like she said, 104 wars.
You mean the wars that we would have had recently?
Yeah. They stopped these wars from happening.
These are wars that were on the verge of breaking out on the planet.
Right, exactly. And some were in progress. And she personally, together with the third dynamic OT8 comps, say that you can't be an OT8 and be working individually. You work on the third dynamic, which is Scientology. These people together diffused the charge on an entire group of N-Theta people on this planet.
How do you know that?
I know it. I know it. I have certainty. There's no doubt in my mind.
Tell me a little bit about the dynamics and the importance to mankind of clearing the planet. I mean, tell me about the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics. Explain all that concept for me.
When a person knows that they are a spiritual being and that they are an immortal being, they are no longer going to be giving consideration to current lifetime to the degree that they do ordinarily. For example, you're an attorney. You're a psychologist. I hate that word, but I like you though. But
that's okay. Make you feel better. I'm really not a psychologist. I told you that before.
I know that, but that's true. All right. You know the lock I have on that whole concept. Okay. You live 70, 80 years. You build up a practice. You accomplish things for your clients. But what do you actually have at the end of 80 years? You drop your body and you've lost your identity, your possessions, and your memory. You drop your body, you go to the Between Lives area, and maybe, if you're lucky, you won't wind up in the year 600 as a member of the Zulu tribe of Ethiopia, you know, or whatever. No, the machine will get it.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay, let me rephrase that last thing I was asking about. Within the Scientology community,
yes,
there's the concept of the dynamics.
Right. The greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics.
Okay. With that in mind, explain what that means.
That means there are 8 dynamics. And, of course, you know what they are. Mark may not know. The first dynamic is the dynamic to survive or to be as yourself. Second is as a family member, family unit, as a spouse. Third would be the group. Scientology is considered the third dynamic. Fourth is mankind. Fifth is all life forms, which would include the plant and the animal kingdom. Sixth is the entire physical universe. Seventh is spirits, other thetans. And eight, it would be considered the infinite, or God, or if you, the creative, the creator dynamic, you can call it that. That would be the eighth dynamic.
Okay. In that scheme, who would you be benefiting by revealing the truth about your being Christ's Father and thereby leading large numbers of people to Scientology?
All eight dynamics.
How important an act would that have been?
The most important act in my entire 76 trillion years.
How would you balance out the, you know, you've heard the phrase, you can't make an omelet without breaking an egg. How do you balance out the interests of various people when it comes to good for the largest number of dynamics?
Well, obviously, certain people will be very hurt or ARC broken when they get this true data. But the idea is, once they get over this initial secondary, you know what a secondary is, then at that point, they will have freed a lot of charge on their own personal first dynamic track. And they will see that what they have been regarding as true data has been false data. Therefore, what then happens is that they will address the source of the true data. They will know that this e-meter can prove that I am Jesus Christ, Father Malchut. And that being the case, who developed the e-meter? Scientology. This is the source of the truth, but what is the source of the meter? And it all comes down to the first incident on the track.
So even though people might be initially distressed by this revelation,
they might be initially shocked, ARC broken, or totally devastated.
Well, but
it is for the greatest good, for the greatest number of dynamics, that they have this data, false data, stripped. Because why should, let me ask you a question. Is it fair in the 12th century, I had an existence in the 12th century. I was a nun. I was a nun in the 12th century. And I thought it was so important to deny myself pleasure that I died from a hemorrhage in going to the bathroom. Because I didn't want, and not going to the bathroom, I didn't want there to be any pleasure in my life, because I was into sacrifice at that time, sacrificing for the church. So I hemorrhaged because I held my bowels in until they erupted, because I was afraid that any little pleasure might be too much of a sin. Now, that type of thinkingness is what I am here to eradicate in clearing the planet. When you clear a planet, you asked me that before we got interrupted. When you clear a planet, it doesn't mean clearing half the people off the earth. That's an MU. That would be a bad way of looking at clearing, you know. Clearing means to raise one's state of awareness that they are not a physical body, that they are a spiritual being operating one, and that they don't have to operate, at least on the first dynamic, in their body. Clear means cleared on the first dynamic, or able to exteriorize. Now, OT is not clear. OT means you're clear on all 8 dynamics. You're not only surviving on all of these dynamics, but you are being them. You can be the physical universe. You can be all the spirits in all of the parallel universes. You can be God. That's right. When you are clear on all 8 dynamics, You can be, do, and have, and know. Those are the 4 operations of life on all 8 dynamics. You can hear every thought that everyone is thinking right now, all over the planet Earth, all over every universe, and every thought that they have ever thought and ever will think. And you can know every one of those thoughts with complete knowingness. Can you grasp the immensity of that? Now, when you have a half a planet of Earth cleared, the other half is very easy. You know, it's like the old expression that Scientology taught me. It's the second million that's the easiest. You know, the first million is the hardest to make, you know. And once you get to the first million, it's very easy to make the second million. Fred Hare said that. The point is, what I'm trying to make is, once you clear half of the people of Earth, and you get them to a level of awareness that they know that they are a spiritual being, the rest of it, I mean, who do you have left? You have some Buddhists, and they're already half clear. Because Buddhism, you know, L. Ron Hubbard was Buddha. L. Ron Hubbard, read The Hymn of Asia. Have you ever read The Hymn of Asia?
No.
The Hymn of Asia is a book that L. Ron Hubbard wrote. In fact, it's right here. I have it right here. In which he tells about his life as Buddha. And what mistakes he made at that time because he didn't go all the way. Buddha talked about the state of clear. But he didn't tell anyone how to do it. That's what Scientology takes up where Buddhism leaves off.
Is that why there are some similarities between Scientology and Buddhism?
Yeah, because L. Ron Hubbard was Buddha. In fact, in many of my literature it says, join the greatest push on the planet Earth since the last 2,500 years. The 2,500 years ago refers to Buddha. In fact, the greatest act of suppression on the Earth in the last 2,500 years was Christ.
Is that why there's a similarity between the Tibetan Book of the Dead, for example, and the Between Lives area?
Yeah, it's because the Vedic hymns, when the Vedic hymns were written by Ron in that lifetime, that data was written down, and of course the Between Lives area is an offshoot of that. The Vedic hymns was written by Ron too. Can you explain the Between Lives area? Very, very well.
Tell me about it.
Okay, this is a lot of fun. Okay, you ready for this? Okay, I love talking about the Between Lives area. It's one of my favorite subjects. When you die by dropping your body, whether it's voluntarily, like Ron did, or involuntarily, like most people die from dying, you do a shift in space, and you appear. You don't go cause-distance effect, you go cause-effect. You appear without distance at the Between Lives area station, which is a long gangplank, sort of thing, leading to the gates of Mars. Have you ever heard of that expression before, the gates of Mars? No. That's the entranceway to the Between Lives area.
Where is it?
Mars. Mars. The planet Mars. Why do you think visions of hell are red? Did you ever stop to think about that?
No.
Well, that's the reason.
Okay.
You learn that you learn that actually in OT3, by the way. When you get to the Between Lives area, you see people, or specters actually, you know, like ghost-like figures, walking. But they're totally out of ARC with everyone else, because they've been, when you die, you go through this period of great non-confront, where you try to stay with the body until you really know it's dead, and then when you really confront that it's dead, the implant just has you report back. And reporting back is an actual command that you get before you pick up a new body, but I'll explain that later. You go on this line towards the gates of Mars, and you see the typical white light at the end of this tunnel, but there's no real tunnel. It's like a bridge. It's an actual bridge. And on the line, following other people, which you can't really communicate with because you're really everyone's in their own universe, and they really are in total out of ARC with everyone else. You can look over the sides of this bridge without the railing, and you see what looks to the average wog as hell. But that's the the wall of fire. You see? Nobody jumps into the wall of fire.
Let's take a break. Okay, so you were describing walking along the gangplank when the phone rang.
Yes, right. And I love
fire.
I love my machine. Yes, you look down and you see the wall of fire. Of course, in my book, I call it the pit of fire. You know, just because I didn't want to infringe on any trademarks of theirs, but it's the same thing. It's just for your edification. Because the wall of fire is a patented trademark, I think, of Scientology. I didn't want to break the law. Anyway, so you see the wall of fire, and they are visions of hell and fire and brimstone and the devil and whatever this is. And nobody jumps off the bridge into the wall of fire, but in OT3, you have to. You have to confront the wall of fire while you're... That's the point. So you have to jump into the wall of fire. Now, what happens when you jump into the wall of fire? Because, of course, I was co-audited on this in Copenhagen. First thing you think, you're burning up, you know. But as a spiritual being, as a Thetan, you can't feel pain. As soon as you can confront the visios, the pictures, it all as-is-is.
It what?
It as-is-is.
As-is-is?
As-is-is, which means you make a mental image picture vanish. Because you create you create a perfect duplicate, and you make it vanish. You know what I'm talking about.
Certainly.
Okay. So then you go through another level of hell below that. It's the sea of souls, you know. And you feel yourself choking, and you feel the mud going up your nostrils and in your throat, and all of these different things are happening to you, and you feel this weight of gravity like drowning you in mud and quicksand and everything else. And as soon as you confront that, it explodes away and vanishes, you know. And then you have there are other levels below that. There's the ice cube, which is, you know, they're all in the history of man, really. Anyone can really read them and not know what they really are. But in any case, you go through all of these levels, and at the bottom of this thing, you find out, hey, I'm okay. I can confront anything. Because all of these pictures are false pictures. But this is not what happens in the Between Lives area. Now, I digressed to tell you about how to confront OT3. You know.
What's the Between Lives area?
Okay, let's do the Between Lives area first. Mm-hmm. So you finally get to the gates of Mars, and
you're on the gangplank.
You're on the gangplank, and it takes the whole process takes 69 days.
69 days?
Of Earth time. You know, and it's the first day you spend on the gangplank, or the first 3 days, I forget exactly what it is. I have the data somewhere. But then you get into you go through the Between Lives area and pass through the gates of Mars. And the first thing that happens is that you get a compulsion or an implant or a hypnotic suggestion in WOG language to mock up how you died, or to recreate a picture of your death. But the problem with it is, it's not really how you died. You mock up a false death. In other words, if you died from a heart attack, you might get the compulsion to recreate a picture of you dressed something entirely different in a different time period, different space location, being hit by a truck. So automatically what's happening is that you're totally confused. The purpose of the Between Lives area, I should say, first of all, is to wipe out your memory so that when you come back, you don't remember anything. After you go through this rigorous procedure of mocking up a false death, then you're given something called the year zero. The year zero, right away, if you ever see the year zero after you drop your body, you'll know it's a fake implant, because there is no year zero. But what occurs is that you have to recreate your entire time track from the beginning of time by creating pictures. The first phase, I should say, is when they give you pictures of your false death. They give the pictures to you.
Who's they?
The suppressives that run the Between Lives area on automatic. It actually runs on automatic.
Who does that, though?
Well, in the upper levels, you realize that it was set up by Christ. in one of his first lifetimes. But you don't get this data really. You're not supposed to get this data until OT5. I have an in, so I got the data. You know.
What's the in?
Well, anyway, when I was in Denmark, I pulled a few strings, and they thought I was at a higher level than I really was. So I got some confidential data, and I wrote that up later on, and I got into a lot of trouble for that too. But anyway, the point is, you learn in the second wall of fire that it was Jesus Christ who built the Between Lives area, and that was his overt. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, what occurs is this. The first phase, you are given pictures of a false death. You don't mock them up yourself. I think I might have said that, but in retrospect, you are given the pictures. The second phase is the year zero, when you have to create pictures of your entire time track from, quote, the year zero. Except what you're doing is you're creating a lot of mock-ups and a lot of, very much like a dream. Like very much the way you dream. When you dream things, you create things out of sequence, and sometimes you wake up scared because you're the total effect of the dream. And he's falling asleep. It's too many MUs, you see. Doping off again. Anyway, during the second phase of the Between Lives area, when you recreate all of these moments of past track, they're not really right either, because interspersed with the creation of the past track are also other implants and suggestions which make the data false. Okay? Then the third phase of the Between Lives area is something called This Is Your Life.
Oh, with Ralph Edwards?
Wait. It's a story that they give you again of your next life on Earth. Except it's also a false story. And it's also with wrong pictures and wrong dates and wrong visios. And it's taken from the random aggregate of the total amount of time track available as mental image picture storage in the entire universe. And you're getting all kinds of random sequences of your next life, which have nothing whatsoever to do with your next life, because your next life is dependent upon your entry point or your anchor point into the physical universe by virtue of this very suppressive sequence, which is the fourth cycle, which is called the human race. And the human race is you as a Thetan vigorously pushing and shoving and fighting and clawing a bunch of other Thetans to pick up a zygote, which is a fertilized egg and a sperm at the moment of conception. Now, when you do this, you have already done a time shift and a space shift. So you're not necessarily back in 1989 or 88. You could be in the year 1200 or the year 3000. That's how I got into the year 22 BC in my last lifetime, when I was Jesus' father. Because when I came back after the lifetime, after the previous lifetime, I came back not sequentially in time or chronologically in time, but I came back at the year 22 BC, and I was the son of Amiohai the Cantor in Nazareth, you know, and there I was. But getting back to the Between Lives area again, here you are totally wiped out with your memory from the 3 sessions that you've had in the Between Lives area on Mars, and you come back and you have to fight all these people. You get this beautiful sound of a baby crying. You get all of these suggestions. You also get a false dear souls picture of Jesus, which most people get. They see this picture of Jesus, and when they come back to life, they think he's a nice guy. He was really the biggest suppressive that ever lived. And the fact is that when you're fighting all these other Thetans to pick up the zygote, you have to be a real bastard, a real son of a bitch, because you have to literally knock them out of the way dead to get to that fertilized egg. And what could happen? You could go through 11 attempted abortions by the time you get reborn and go through the Between Lives area after each one. Let's say you pick up a zygote and the mother aborts the fetus. That means you got to go square one back to the gates of Mars on the bridge and go through another 69 days of bullshit. And then pick up another. You have to keep fighting until you get to that baby, and that baby actually survives to birth.
See, when you said a minute ago that Jesus was the biggest suppressive who ever lived, but doesn't suppressive actually mean someone who's doing something that's contrary to the organization called Scientology?
That's one definition. The other definition is a suppressive is anyone who suppresses you as a Thetan. Okay? There's a multiple definition. I don't even have to look it up. I can tell you right away. It suppresses you as a Thetan. How did Jesus Christ suppress us as Thetans? He created the between lives area.
Didn't you once say to me something about psychologists having something to do with the between lives area?
No.
Maybe I misunderstood.
Well, what's the Scientology attitude towards psychologists?
Well, obviously, I'll tell you right away. Let's supposing a person has a problem with their wearing a necktie or a problem with drinking milk. What the hell can psychiatry or psychology ever find out about my past lives to correct this problem? They'll look at environment, they'll look at genetic blueprint, they'll look at all kinds of unimportant present lifetime garbage factors, but they're not going to find out that I was hung in the square of Malaga, and they're not going to find out that my ex-wife 8 lifetimes ago in Tahiti poisoned me with milk. And therefore psychiatry and psychology is a false science that does not work, that actually traps the Thetan into thinking also falsely that things that they can actually heal or cure or proof up a body, and they can't. In fact, they actually cave people in. Seriously.
Have you ever taken any formal position against psychologists? Did you ever participate in any?
Oh, yes.
Anything?
I was one of the delegates to the Psych Bust.
What was that?
To the at Flag, we had a major rally in April of '87, and there were delegates from every org on the planet at this place, and I was one of the delegates from the Fort Lauderdale mission at the time. They had some. I was at that time still connected with Fred Hare at the mission before I was routed to the org when Fred Hare's work was done. Actually, Fred Hare's work shouldn't have been done, because if he had stayed on, nothing like this would have happened. I personally think that it was the org that screwed things up and made some mistakes. There's a lot of people there that are, well, like Umberto, the one who cut my arm with a scissor and chopped off a half an inch out of my flesh. Those kind of people are really pretty Theta people, but the mission people were nice.
But anyway, back to the Psych Bust.
Okay, the Psych Bust took place in April, I think it was April 9th of '87. We went to Flag, and we were given a big briefing on
where?
the Flag land base in Clearwater, Florida, 210 South Harrison Avenue at the Fort Harrison Hotel. And in the ballroom of on the 10th floor of Flag, we were given a private briefing by some of the execs of CCHR. Dennis Clark is the head of CCHR. You may know of him. He was the one who found that Jolly Llewellyn West gave an elephant LSD, you know. Another one that was there was Fred Freddie Ulan, U-L-A-N. And the two of them gave a great briefing on how we were going to eliminate psychiatry in the world, and what we had to do as individual Thetans in order to do that. One of the plans to eliminate psychiatry initially in this country is to see to it that psychology and psychiatry can no longer bill insurance companies for their therapy. That'll cut their financial lines right away, you know. And there's a big push going on now with CCHR to introduce certain legislative measures in Washington to eliminate psychology and psychiatry procedure codes.
What does CCHR stand for?
Citizens Commission for Human Rights. They're the only organization in the world today that exposes the dangers of psychiatry, and I have quite a lot of literature from them. Freedom Magazine is always full of it, full of that literature, and I also have a lot of the briefing notes from that time. I have them here. And of course, we went through some of the things such as electric shock therapy. They brought in that electric shock machine made by a company ironically called Somatics Inc. That's the name of the manufacturer of the ECT machine, you know, if you know. And how drug therapy is being administered to the school children, how Ritalin is rampant, and that the kids are buying and selling it because it's actually a controlled substance, you know. The problem with drugs is that it prevents the body from exteriorizing on one hand, and certain drugs, like LSD, do an involuntary exteriorization of the thetan from the body. Recently I read that some forms of crack were also responsible for involuntary exteriorizations. So there's like a duality here of the inhibitors that prevent, certain drugs inhibit the body, the thetan from leaving the body, and certain other drugs force the thetan out of the body. But it's all bad because you're the effect of these drugs.
We're talking about drugs. Haven't you also had an opinion about caffeine?
Well, caffeine causes AIDS. Well, not causes AIDS, it's the catalyst for AIDS. I personally have some knowledge of this because when I was in Auschwitz, at that time Dr. Joseph Mengele was working on biological and germ warfare. And he developed a virus, which at that time nobody knew what it was called, which would create a imbalance in the immune system, which later on I found out through Scientology was the AIDS virus. It was
saying Mengele was one who developed AIDS?
He was the creator of the AIDS virus. And he did it while I was in the concentration camp.
So what does caffeine have to do with it?
Caffeine is the catalyst by which a person who has exposure to the virus comes down with the full-blown AIDS disease. The fact of the matter is, if you have the virus and you don't have caffeine, you can't get the disease. That's true. After the war, when they did experiments, after World War II, when experiments were done by I.G. Farben in Africa with a lot of the natives, and in Argentina, another company did some in Argentina under Mengele. He was continuing these experiments. They were done on two fronts. It was like they were playing the birthday game too, but in a negative way. They actually showed how in control groups, those people that took caffeine in their systems got the disease, while the ones that were never given caffeine but were given the HIV-3 virus never came down with it and were healthy.
How would you find this out?
Well, my case involved, my auditing involved the Mengele business.
So in other words, everything...
So I was also party to a lot of briefing, which could be... I was CS for certain briefings on AIDS because of the fact that my time track had a parallel intersection of that area.
You're saying that some of this you learned then on the meter?
Oh, yeah. And the rest of it I got in briefings at the org. They had a special briefing, I think it was in January of this year, at the Miami org.
Okay, now back to the psych bust. What was the psych bust? You told us about how you were going to rid the planet of psychiatry.
Well, we were also supposed to do certain things to discredit various suppressive psychiatrists. Writing letters. I had to write a letter, for example, to President Cossiga of Italy about a psychiatrist in Italy who was actually trying to drive the Church of Scientology out of Milan. And my project was to discredit the psychiatrist by making up some stories about some homosexual affair he had, you know, which was easy for me to do because I was the one. I was assigned to this because of my own case. Don't forget, I was the one who convinced Judas Iscariot to betray Christ. Judas Iscariot and Jesus Christ were homosexual lovers. You know that. And I convinced Judas that Christ was having an imaginary affair with another guy, when in fact he wasn't. He was really faithful to Judas. And Judas, in his rage, betrayed him. It had nothing to do with money. It had to do with the fact that he was very much in love with Christ. And that's how Judas betrayed him, because I talked him into it. So it was very easy for me to write the letter to the president of Italy, or prime minister, I forget what he was. Cossiga was his name, indicating the psychiatrist had had a homosexual affair with a nephew of mine, you know. And it was all mocked up. It was a mock-up process. But it was necessary because if enough people did this, it would discredit the lines of this psychiatrist who was destroying the church in Italy, in Milan.
Was this another example of the greatest good for the greatest number?
Absolutely. Because who the hell gives a damn about this psychiatrist if the whole city of Milan was at risk of not being cleared? You follow?
You think you did anything wrong there?
No way. I would do it again. The psychiatrist was an SP.
What's an SP?
Suppressive. You have no idea how much this psychiatrist did on the whole track. I read the briefing. I mean, this guy was something else. He was one of the people on Exolia who bred us for a planet, who bred us for food so that the higher intelligences could eat. We're doing the same thing right now with veal on this planet. We're no better. But the fact is these were actual Thetans in bodies being bred until they were 15 years old as food on Exolia so that the higher intelligences who knew more, who had better knowingness, could eat. They ate the people. And this damn psychiatrist from Milan was the one who did that. And he deserved it.
What sort of a briefing was it where you were told about this?
Oh, the briefing was an intensive briefing at the org. So they came down, the technical team from FLAG came down, and there was very few people in the briefing. It was I had to be there. Actually, they were briefed individually. There were appointments made with individual Scientologists in order to brief them on what they individually had to do to help the third dynamic. And my briefing session involved understanding the why, the hidden why about this psych suppressive, and exactly why it was important for me to do it, because my hat was the way I got Jesus out of the way in the last lifetime. I had to do the same thing basically without getting personally involved in the issue.
How would people know that that was part of your whole track?
What do you mean?
That you had this particular skill, that you had gotten rid of Jesus in that way?
Because it was part of my OWs.
What do you mean by OW?
I wrote them up as overt withholds.
What is an OW?
An overt withhold is a confessional write-up. It's like a KR, a knowledge report, that you write up to ethics, to HCO, and to your auditor. There's like 4 copies of a OW, you know.
So every time you discovered something?
Every time you either commit a crime against Scientology or you've discovered something you've done to hurt the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics. Basically, that's the reason for any OW.
And what would happen to these OWs? Would they become part of some file?
It would be part of CF, Central Files.
What about part of your case? Would it become part of your case file?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would go. My case file was always being reviewed. You don't know how many times the case file was missing because it had to go to INT. Yeah. So, International Management, which was the highest management. That's like WDC INT, actually, particularly. WDC INT is the watchdog committee for international management. And my file was always being sent up there because I was basically a pretty hot property, you know, because of who I was in respect to Christ Father, because of the fact that I was an FP, which is a specialized financial planner doing certain work for the orgs, and because of the fact that I was wearing quite a few different strategic hats, which came under the purview of the GO and then later of the OSA. Plus the fact that very few people have been briefed by the top-level execs at FLAG about a major project. Do you know anyone else who could possibly have cleared half the planet and who will with this book? Do you know anybody else who's going to clear half of Earth? No. No. But this book's going to do it, with or without Scientology. The greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics right now, believe it or not, the greatest good is, even if Scientology declares me to be an SP, I'm still going to wear my hat. And I'm still going to be a Scientologist, and Ron is going to be proud of me. Because no matter what happens with some of the flubs that occurred and some of the things that I did in not following my ethics handling correctly, and I admit them, I write up my own OWs now, you know.
With that in mind, keeping in mind the importance of what you're doing, let's just think of that and hold it aside for a second. And if you would tell us about the various contacts that Scientology has had with you after your arrest and what it is that you've been instructed to do. Can you tell me that story for a few minutes?
Yes. I've been instructed to do an EOC, which is an end of cycle.
Meaning?
Kill myself. Suicide.
When were you first instructed to do that? Well, tell us what happened after you were arrested and then released on bail.
Okay. Well, there's the notes right there.
But just tell us about it now.
Why do you have these notes?
For you.
Okay, I asked you to do this, right?
Yes, you did. After I was, when I was arrested, I tried to call Ray Jordan from the jail, and he wouldn't accept the call. Well, basically, in a nutshell, without going through the 12 pages of notes there, INT management now feels, their position right now is that I could cause Scientology a greater embarrassment than I could possibly do good for them. I disagree with that position. They feel that right now, because I've been arrested and because there's a flap about this class action lawsuits, that I could cause them the greatest harm rather than the greatest good.
Is this what you were told?
Yeah, I was told that by Humberto Fontana, the DSA Miami. No INT management execs have contacted me since this arrest.
Do you recall where you were?
When I was arrested?
No, where you were when the last interruption happened.
No.
Where you were in this, we were talking about.
No. Do you know, Barry?
No. Okay, I think you...
You're talking about Ray Jordan, in your conversation with Ray Jordan.
Okay. So I tried to call Ray Jordan initially, and he refused to accept my call. And after I was arrested, there were various calls from different people. Mark Witt's call was probably the most upsetting because he didn't leave many alternatives as a handling for this situation. See, I felt that when I was arrested, that INT management would send their attorneys immediately to help me, you know, because I really, when I came out of the airport and I was arrested by Bill Kemp, and first the customs agents grabbed me. And I said, are you sure it's me you're looking for? I couldn't believe it. It was like, why? You know, what, do you know my name? I kept on asking, do you know my name? And they said, yes, we do. I said, what is my name? And I couldn't believe that they were arresting me. I couldn't understand why. And the first thing that went through my mind is maybe they knew about the driver's license that Frank Thompson let me use, which was for Robert Walker, the one they made up at the ethics office. I said, but why would they be arresting me for that? I said, maybe it's illegal to have another driver's license. And it wasn't until Kemp gave me the complaint in the office at the airport that it hit me what was going on. And even so, I didn't understand what the complaint was for, or what was it for, because it said Larkspur, California, and I didn't know. I said I was never there. I didn't even know where Larkspur was. And of course, he wanted to ask me questions, but I didn't have an attorney, and my father was there, and he told me not to answer any questions unless I had an attorney, so I didn't say anything. But on the way to MCC, where he took me, I was trying to explain to him that it was important that we met because he could do something about the AIDS virus. I was trying to explain to him about the caffeine. Remember the other day he mentioned that he had communicated the information to the other agents. But I said to him, that's the real main reason why we met, because you don't have this data. And it's vital that you do, because people are dying. And I explained it to him, you know. But
so what about Ray Jordan?
Yeah, let's keep this principally to the story that begins with the first suggestion that you do an end of cycle. Those are the parts of it, and everything that follows from that is what I'm principally interested in this question.
Well, I asked what was going to be done now about my mission, my purpose, my goals, and I was told that it would have to be put on hold. and that it couldn't be done. And I said, what do you mean it couldn't be done? How can you not clear half a planet? You know. Anyway, two people in the Miami org explained it to me. First was Mark Witt. When it really came down to it, he told me that what they would do for me in doing an end of cycle, there'd be a fair exchange, and they would guarantee me safe passage through the Between Lives area, where I could come back in a Scientology Sea Org family and have my full bridge paid for, which is what I was trying to do now. And there would be no doubt that I could go to full OT8 or whatever the level was. But I had some other data, and I questioned it. The data was the fact that when you return, you could do a shift in time, and I could wind up in the year 1200. What guarantee could there be that I would come back in a Sea Org family right now in this time period? And it's sort of, I detected a little bit of, like, over the phone, you know, in your TRs, you drill on knowing a person's reaction. And I detected a little bit of like Q&A and back off with Mark Witt, that he didn't really have an answer, but he came up with an answer. But I didn't really know if it was the real answer. But it might be. He said that regardless of the way the Between Lives area works, we have tech to bypass it, to get you through it and deliver what we promise. So it sounded like a good idea.
Did he explain to you what that tech was?
He said it's upper level tech that I would be briefed on, and I'd have to come down to the org. And of course, I was supposed to see the DSA Miami, Humberto Fontana, but I don't really like Humberto very much.
Did he tell you that it was L10?
He told me that, of course, I don't know whether it was L10 or not, because L10, I was supposed to do all 3 Ls at Flag. That was part of what I was supposed to do with the bridge fund.
But he didn't mention to you the particular upper level tech that this was.
He said it was a booster. Now that could have been L10. I don't know. He didn't mention any of the Ls. Okay. He said it was booster tech.
Why didn't you like Humberto?
Because he cut me right here with the scissor. When he regarding the car, when I took money out to buy the car.
What was that money for?
Supposed to be for the bridge, but it was the money from the cases that they didn't want touched. And I was having some problems, some ethics problems, because I was always being routed to ethics. I mean, it's time already. I was supposed to start. Why did I have to wait for the entire $500,000 to come in? Why couldn't I at least start? I was ready. They had promised me that I would be starting by the beginning of '88, and nothing was really happening on it. You know, and it sounded like another case with the Golden Era Productions thing, where they say something and they weren't doing it for some reason.
So you were supposed to have the $500,000 collected to do what? To go up the bridge?
To be at Flag, to get going up the bridge you can do in all kinds of orgs, except when you get to you can do at an org like Miami, you go through Class 5, which is NED. Then you go to a St. Hill org to do level 6, and then you go to AOLA, which would be you would I'm talking about the training side of the bridge now, you know, at AOLA or a Celebrity Center. Well, no, I don't know about Celebrity Center. AOLA for sure. And from AOLA, after you...
No, aren't you talking about the auditing side?
Well, I'm talking about both sides, really, okay. You know. But my CS told me, which is Mark Witt's wife, Lisa Witt, she told me that with my case being so pivotal and critical for the future of clearing planet Earth, because I was the only proof they had that was demonstrable about Christianity being a fraud, that I had to be trained at Flag. And I said, when am I going to start? trained and audited. Processed. The whole works. Training I was getting, but processing, I needed to get processed by a class 12. I was promised, when I have that money, it'll cover a class 12, it'll cover all my L's, it'll cover going to the free winds, doing OT8, and even OT9. They would...
You were explaining what it was that Umberto did to you.
Umberto, when he was very angry. So he...
What did you do?
I took $50,000 out of their account, and I bought an Olante.
Well, was it their account or was it your account?
Well, it was in my name, but I wasn't allowed to use that money except for going up the bridge.
And this was money you got from?
This was money that was got from the class action lawsuits.
Okay.
And to this day, when they put the cigarette burns, and he and Charlie Fox put the burns on my hands, they haven't healed. So I didn't really want to go down to see Umberto, because Umberto can be very, very cruel, needless to say. But Umberto called me, and he said, I asked him, is there an alternate way to handle this? Forget about it. Forget about it, don't worry about it.
Let's stop for a second.
Okay, back to Umberto.
Great.
Umberto said, I asked Umberto, I suggested an alternate handling, and of course you can't really do that, really. But I did it anyway. I said, isn't there any possibility, I said, isn't there any possibility of me being in another location where I can still do the work that I'm supposed to do in this current lifetime? I said, Frank got me a license. Can he get me a passport so I can get away and just be somewhere either at St. Hill or at Knapp or someplace, or Anzo? That's the Australia-New Zealand org. That's also a St. Hill org, And he said, it's not the body that we're concerned about. It's not even Steve Fishman we're concerned about. It's the Thetan running Steve Fishman that's causing a risk to the church. In other words, I realized I really got the viewpoint at that point that, I was the one they were wanting to do the Thetan. But I said, but still, if I'm going to be coming back, as Mark said, in the Between Lives area, it's going to be me, the Thetan. Yeah, but he said, that's precisely the handling. Because from day one of the successive lifetime, you're going to be in the hands of Sea Org qualified personnel, which will be your parents. You're going to have Sea Org parents. And you will be guaranteed your bridge, But I still had a problem confronting. I had a problem confronting because I had conflicting data about doing the time shift. And I didn't know. I said, give me the data of how you can verify the fact that I would go through the Between Lives area safely, and I'll come down today and I'll do it.
Do what?
I'll take the lethal injection. Just give me that data. And he says, but you can't get the data because you haven't gone up the bridge far enough. I said, but it's a catch-22. You're asking me to rely on data that I don't have to do a thing which could, to my mind, be, he says, you're not confronting. It's a lack of confront. He says, drill it. Drill it. And there's nothing to drill because I still need the data. If they could, right now, if they could provide me data that, why, where?
Okay, we're on.
Go ahead, where were we now?
You were talking about having conflicting data, and you were in the middle of the sentence, a sentence that began with, if right now I believed or I had data.
If right now if I could see the data which could show me how they could guarantee my safe passage through the Between Lives area, I would definitely go do it.
Do
right
what?
now. I mean, I would go down there and take the lethal injection.
Have they, other than that conversation you've talked about with Mark Witt, have there been any other conversations where other people at
Leona Grimm
have asked you about taking lethal
Well,
injection?
she told me when the medicine came.
What medicine?
The cyanide. And she told me when it arrived, and I should come down and pick it up.
Who else? If anybody else?
Linda
called?
Miller. And then Ray Jordan called back again. And when Charlie Fox called the other day, he didn't talk about that. He just
What
talked
was it
about
you were told to do that involved writing a note, a suicide note and so on? Weren't you told where to go and what to do?
to the Coconut Grove Hotel. To the Coconut Grove Hotel and check in and write a note and explain to them in the note that it's hard to think that they would. I mean, they loved me. I was the public person of the week on 30 November '86 and 6 December '86.
What's hard?
It's hard to think that just because of this business with the arrest, they would all want me to drop the mock-up and go. You know, when I was the very hope of the entire organization. I was the person that was going to clear the planet. That's why I said, the hell with everything. I'm going to write the Holy Book of Life, and they're going to have the data, and I'm going to clear the planet anyway. Because I know that's what Ron wants me to do.
Okay, but you're saying that they talked to you about going to the Coconut Grove Hotel. What were you supposed to do there?
I was supposed to take the lethal injection.
And write a note?
Write a suicide note.
And what was supposed to be in the note?
Well, it was supposed to be to the effect that blaming certain people.
Who?
Well, you.
Yeah.
For example.
Blaming your attorney. Who else?
It was like an admission of a lot of different things. That I was responsible for for what happened, and that I couldn't live with myself for having put the church at risk, you know, and that I was the one that was at fault and blaming everybody else, you know.
Okay. Now, when did that occur? When was that suggestion made to go to the Coconut Grove Hotel?
About 10 days before the original date of around the 9th of September, I think it was.
And what
because it was about 10 days before they wanted me to plead guilty.
Who wanted you to plead guilty?
Well, when they called me up with that situation with the invisible word. You know, Dr. Geertz explained that to you.
Well, what was that all about?
Well, I didn't. It was.
Tell us what happened.
Yeah. What do you remember?
Well, what I remember about it is that there was a time lapse, and it was through hypnosis with Dr. Geertz that I was able to recall what happened. The fact that they told me that I was to plead guilty and that the invisible word was not. That I wasn't supposed to say the invisible word. That I was supposed to plead guilty, and I was to say guilty, Your Honor, when the judge asked me how do I plead to the counts in the indictment.
Now, who asked you to do this? Or who told you to do this?
I got a call from Denise Muntz from Flag. Her last name is not Muntz anymore. She got married recently, like 6 months ago.
And this was around the time of when?
Just before the indictment.
What did she say?
She induced she induced reverie somehow. I forget the exact wording on it, but she wanted me to plead guilty. She said that. Well, she said, no, you're going to plead guilty because not is the invisible word. The invisible word.
And the invisible word meant that you couldn't say it?
Right.
And how much of this did you remember before you had the session with Dr. Geertz?
Nothing. But I remembered it after.
Well, how did you know to look for it in the session with him?
He asked about contacts under hypnosis.
He's asked you consistently since then about the contacts?
About contacts. And there was like a time that I was supposed to that I was out there walking in the ocean at night at 1 in the morning. And I don't remember that, but my bathing suit was wet because it was wet. I was supposed to walk to St. Hill.
This was based on a call you received from them?
At around 12:37 in the evening.
How do you know 12:37?
Well, through our session with Dr. Geertz, the time I had looked at the clock before the phone rang. It was after Dusty called, and the phone rang, and it was 12:37.
What about, you mentioned something to me at one point about an unusual blowout on one of the tires on your car?
It was on the left rear tire. I was driving home. I was driving home from Dusty's house, and it was late at night, around 1 in the morning, and I didn't think anything of it because the tire blew out. I never had a blowout before, but the policeman who stopped on me on 95 when I was in trouble, he gave me a ride to the phone. He said to me, "This is the most unusual blowout I've ever seen because you have a lock on your wheels." And the lock was blown off, as well as the wheel cover. And that's not how a blowout works. And I said, "What do I know? I never had one before." The following day, I got a call, and I don't know who it is for sure, but it sounded like Charlie Fox, because he didn't identify himself. He says, "Next time, it's going to be all 4 tires."
Charlie Fox called you?
Yeah.
Okay.
He said, "Next time, it's going to be all 4 tires."
Have you gotten any other calls since then from anybody else in Scientology concerning taking your own life?
Almost every day.
Who has called you?
Well, I've gotten calls consistently from Leona and from Linda Miller.
What did Leona say?
Well, Leona said that the last thing that happened, the last contact with her, is that the grace period ended, and now it's going to be a situation where the EOC may not be exactly as pleasant. In other words, it won't be a causative EOC. It would basically be uncausative on my part because I failed to participate in the handling. And I can't bring myself to do it. You know. I've tried. I've really tried.
What do you mean you've tried?
One day I said to myself, I'm going to go down there and do it. I'm going to pick it up, and I started to go down there, and I just couldn't go through with it. I didn't go to the org. I was on my way to the org, and I couldn't do it because I said, I'm not sure. There's something. Besides, this is the reason why I'm not going to do it, because I have to get this message across. And I said, what am I accomplishing by doing an EOC when the data that I wrote in here, in the Holy Book of Life, is going to accomplish what I was supposed to do? Ron would never have me abandon my post as a Thetan, not only as a Scientologist, because I realized I did an eval on this whole situation, and this is how these are the conclusions that I now have. There are 2 choices, because I'm wearing 2 hats. There's a hat of a Scientologist, and they are forcing me to abandon that hat. But a hat of a Thetan, I can't abandon. Do you see the difference? Mm-hmm. And Ron would not. He could probably understand why I didn't follow policy regarding doing an EOC, because in not following policy and getting this book out, it's still the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics, and I'm still wearing my hat as a Thetan. And I'm sure in time, even though time is the source of all aberration, in time I will be proved out as having been right. I'm convinced that by not doing the EOC and by having this book published and by enabling the half of the world who are under the brainwashing of Christianity, which is a cult, they will be free and be able to be set free, and those are the people that Scientology will be able to at least clear because of me.
Steve, do you think that Ron would have ever wanted you to do anything illegal? Thinking about it now?
Yeah. It's not illegal. it's the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics. It's not illegal. Ron wanted me to go up the bridge.
No, that wasn't what I was asking about. What I was asking about, let me put it differently. Do you think Ron would want you to do an EOC? Do you think he was the kind of person who would want you to do an EOC when there was another way to do it?
No. I think that Ron really wants me to do this. Okay. Because I've spoken to Ron.
Okay. You've spoken to Ron?
I've spoken to Ron.
When?
When?
While I'm asleep, in a dream state. I've exteriorized and I've spoken to Ron. Ron is on New Arcturus, a place where we're going to have to go unless this world is prevented, unless nuclear war is prevented. And Ron told me, just as close as you are to me now, he said to me, wear your hat as a Thetan. I said, well, what am I supposed to do? He said, just wear your hat as a Thetan.
Did it ever occur to you that perhaps the orders that you were getting from up lines, possibly for a long time, could have not been real policy, that maybe Ron didn't know about those things, and maybe the order to have you do an EOC...
You mean prior to his dropping his body, you mean?
Possibly. It's a big organization.
Well, he gave the org, he gave Scientology, he said, if you're going to screw up, basically, it's your org to screw it up. But he entrusted some key people, some of whom I've met personally, with the job of running the org. I can't see how you could say that.
So you don't think there's any possibility that maybe there could have been
I think right now
something going on in the...
Well, I think right now, when whoever put down the directive for me to do an EOC, whether it was the ED int or even higher, you know, or it could have been someone in CSI, you know, in the church itself. Whoever did that didn't really have all the data. I'm convinced, from the conversation I had with Ron, that they didn't have all the data on me. They didn't really know what the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics was, because they didn't realize how important this data in the book is, and that's far more important than any negative PR that could have come from this minor flap that's occurring now with this criminal case. Because this criminal case only has to do with money. And what's money? Money is a consideration.
Let me go back to something. We were at the point where I asked you about other contacts recommending that you or instructing you to drop your body. Recently, have you received any of those recommendations or directives?
Well, through different ways. The induced reverie,
right,
to have me run in front of a car, or to go into Sistrunk Boulevard and 15th Avenue and start hollering the word nigger, you know, at night.
Who made these calls to you?
Well, Linda Miller, Leona Grimm. She used to be Leona Lidler. She got married a few years back. I got a call from Mark Witt. And there were calls there was a call from Kathy Edrich at Flag, and from Sandra Woodard at AOLA.
What was the most recent call?
The last call was the call from Charlie Fox, where he said, I'm fed up with you about the package, this package.
All right, let's talk about the packages for a moment. In the last, what, about month?
Not even that long.
You've received how many packages?
3, including this one.
All right, the one we have here today. You're referring to this that was brought up here was left at your desk? Downstairs, left at the front desk?
This one.
Now, yesterday we spoke to the FBI about these packages, you remember?
Right, to William Kemp.
Okay. The first of the packages, do you remember how that got to you? Did you get a call in advance?
Yes.
What happened?
They said they were sending me the medicine.
Who said that?
Leona. See, Leona is the FBO Miami. It's her hat to handle any financial planning flubs. In other words, anything that went wrong in the area of financial planning has to be handled by, it's her hat to do that. And this whole thing with the money that was seized is really under her responsibility locally.
Money seized by whom?
The money, the church's money that was seized by the government.
The church viewed that as their money?
Well, of course it's their money. I was allowed to use the interest, but I mean, as far as the money is concerned...
The money was in your accounts, though, right?
That was why I got punished for taking the money out for the car, which is my fault.
Did they have any kind of legal control over that money?
Sure.
How?
They had the power of attorney. That Bev Flahan, who used to be the DSA. See, before Humberto Fontana was the DSA, Beverly Flahan was the DSA. And I signed a power of attorney indicating that if I was to be arrested or institutionalized, I forget the wording, then all of my funds would be, they would be able to have access to the funds.
All right, the first call that you got telling you that your medicine was coming
right.
was by Leona?
Yes, Leona. And she said that the best thing to do as soon as it comes is to drink the contents.
Okay. Did you open that package when it arrived?
Yeah.
What was in it?
All kinds of things, green fluids and Drano crap. I don't know what it was. It was stuff. It was poison, basically.
You turned it over to me, right?
Yeah, because I didn't want to do it. I decided by that point that the book was more important. I had spoken to Ron, and I decided the EOC was not an alternative, unless this didn't sell. See, if this doesn't sell, where people don't read this, then what good is my life?
Okay. You got a second package?
The second package, I opened the top of it, and they were some kind of bottles, about 6, 7 bottles.
Did you get a call in connection with that package?
Yes, I did.
Was it before or after?
Before.
Who called you?
Ray
Ray
Jordan.
Why would Ray call you the second time as opposed to Leona?
I don't know.
Okay. What did Ray say?
He told me that it's a spray and I was supposed to breathe it in.
What did you say to that?
I said, we're still talking about the EOC. He said, yes, we are. This has to be handled.
That's a package you also turned over to me.
Yeah.
And we also showed
right.
the FBI agent yesterday both packages,
That's right.
1 and 2. All right. What about this package?
They didn't tell me what's in the package. Charlie Fox called.
And when did he call?
He
got
called,
this package today, right?
Yeah, but he called on either Monday or Tuesday.
Of this week?
Yeah. I don't know exactly when. I think it was Monday.
So that would have been either October 31st or November 1st?
No, it was Tuesday.
November 1st?
Yeah. And he said that this is the last package you'll ever receive. I'm fed up with you. And he hung up.
And then this package came?
Yesterday. But I didn't, we decided not to open it.
You didn't want to pick it up?
I didn't want to pick it up.
Okay.
I'd like to know what's in it.
Well, we'll turn it over to the FBI as they request. Let me ask you a few questions about some of the other past lives that you've had.
Sure.
Okay. Do you recall anyone's significant other than being Malchut and the concentration camp?
Yeah. I'm talking about lots of them on the whole track, you know.
Any that lasted any particular great length of time?
Well, there were jobs where I was on post for a long time. There was a job where I was the spatial conceptualizer of the galaxy.
Where?
Well, this was, again, in the Ava-Delegadran galaxy. And
when was this?
41.5 trillion years ago, I believe it was.
What'd you do?
I put things in size place. I organized everything.
How long did that last, that job?
7,000 to 8,000 lifetimes.
Lifetime of how long?
Probably longer than here, about 110 years each one.
Did that experience have any effect on your current life?
Yes, because I can't live like a pig, like my ex-wife. I can't. You saw her house today. It was a cyclone, right? I imagine.
I noticed your apartment is very organized.
Well,
like even the wall behind you.
Well, I'm getting there because as I put these tapes in the new boxes, see, I have the third largest collection of L. Ron Hubbard's library in the world. And this means a lot to me, this having this, of this data. I mean, I don't care if as long as I have this near me, I can survive, you know, in this particular body.
When you say putting these tapes in new boxes, what are you doing?
Well, I bought these new boxes from New Era Productions, which is an org,
right,
for $3 a box. And now I'm transferring the old boxes. They gave me labels. You see, they never do this for anybody. They did it for me. They gave me blank labels. And I'm to put I have 1,500 of them in the kitchen.
Okay. Let me ask you this. The first 4 rows,
yeah.
Can you get a pan of those? Those are all labeled.
Right. I had to buy a machine to make the tapes. That machine there, that machine cost $1,600 just for these strips.
Oh. Okay.
That's the machine right there. It's a Croy 190. Because you can't put data like this in junky boxes.
Are these tapes organized in any order?
Right. Yes, in chronological order according to lecture number.
And you've got them all organized?
Up to this point, up to tape 2293.
How about the rest of the tapes?
Well, they're in chronological order too, but the numbers aren't on them. But I have a list which I got from Ken Denderfeld. In 1978, he made a list for the Sea Org of the numbers, and it's actually confidential information because only Gold has it. But I got the list, about 5 years ago.
In your job as a spatial conceptualizer, what was your responsibility?
To make sure everything in that galaxy was in size place.
Did that have any effect on the way you've led your life here, other than being orderly and neat?
Oh, yes.
Like what?
For example, when I have soups in the house, and I have alphabet soup, chicken noodle soup, a tomato soup, which I don't like tomato, I like potato soup. So when I have these soups, I eat them in alphabetical order. When I go to buy the soups in the store, if I want to eat minestrone, which starts with an M, I'm not going to buy chicken noodle soup because I've got to eat the chicken noodle soup first because it starts with a C. I'll buy minestrone and split pea because if I want to eat the minestrone, I'm not going to buy a C or a D or an E soup if I want to eat the M soup first.
Doesn't that make it a little complicated about when you want to have soup?
No, because I do things in I don't believe in randomity. I believe in doing things in a certain organized way. That's why I would be a very good Sea Org member. Because when I went and cleaned up their warehouses and put all those tapes in order, they said, "This is another hat you have. You're the librarian of the planet." You know.
How about some other experiences you had in past lives? Were you on any other planets?
Oh, yes.
Like what?
Markhab, prior to this one.
Where was Markhab?
The Markhab Confederacy. Markhab is known as the asteroid belt. It was the planet between Mars and Jupiter.
What happened to it?
Jesus Christ blew it up in another lifetime of his. And we were forced... See, Mars services... used to service Marcab, and then we did a shift over to Earth. We used the same between lives area. There is going to... When the Earth ends on September 9th, 1997, we're going to have to do a shift to the between lives area for New Arcturus.
The Earth is going to end on September 9th, 1997?
It's in my book.
You're certain of it?
Oh, yes. I'm certain of it, because when you exteriorize and you check the future time track, you see that people are not coming back after 1997. They're being shifted onto New Arcturus, and the risk of this is very severe. Do you know the suffering that you go through when you have to go up a complete evolutionary spiral? When the last Holocaust occurred on Earth,
which was
about 4 billion years ago, we had to take whatever bodies were available, and we had to take the bodies of single-celled protozoans. And from that, we went up the evolutionary line.
You're saying that we were more advanced before then?
We were like this. We just blew ourselves up, but the Earth was intact. But right now, with the nuclear threat, what's going to happen is that we're going to be another Marcab. The Earth's gravity core is going to explode. And we're not going to be able to service... The between lives area will no longer be able to service Earth. So we're going to have to do a shift to the between lives area adjacent to New Arcturus, which is where Ron is. He's there in the event that I can't stop that by trapping Jesus Christ in his current lifetime. Then obviously this planet will no longer be serviceable, and then we're all going to be joining Ron on New Arcturus.
Who's Jesus Christ in his current life?
I can't talk about it. I can't even tell you.
Why?
Because I don't want this data given out. It was given to me. It was given to me on the strictest confidence, and it's part of my mission. If you read the Holy Book of Life, my mission is to exteriorize Jesus Christ and put him put him out of ARC with everyone. And once that occurs, Earth will be okay.
Wait a second. When you say exteriorize it, how do you intend to do that?
Not with R-245, believe me. Nothing that involves any violence. I'm talking about get him out of his body, coax him out of his body, and put him basically in a null sequence where he can no longer get into ARC with anyone else here.
Why can't you tell us who he is?
I can't tell you.
I'm your attorney. I'm here to help you.
I know that, but I can't tell you because I can't have any... My immediate life is not as important as my mission. And when it comes to that, I can't disclose the information.
Is he an American?
I can't discuss it.
Why? There are a lot of Americans. I won't be able to guess if you
I mean, if you told him if you told us where...
He's an American.
He is an American.
Yeah.
Is he a Floridian?
I'm not going to discuss
There are 14 million people in Florida.
He's not
I
a Floridian.
better odds on the lottery.
He's not a Floridian.
He's not a Floridian.
But that's it. That's
west of the Mississippi?
Actually,
there are 12 million people.
Actually,
east of the Mississippi.
New York, huh? He lives in Newark, New Jersey.
No, and I'm not going to discuss it any further.
Okay, all right. All right, what did you do on the Marcab planet or the Marcab Confederacy?
I collapsed foreign currencies for a living.
You did what?
I collapsed foreign currencies for a living.
How'd you do that?
Very simple. That was my training at that point. That was why, another reason why I was chosen to, well, anyway.
You were chosen to do what?
By the organization to go into becoming a stockbroker.
Yeah.
Because on Marcab, what would happen was, this. There would be a currency that was looking to borrow money from the main lending institution of the planet. The set of politics were a little different from here. And as soon as this country wanted to borrow money, the lending institution, of which I was their computer operator, would say, fine, you got the loan. You can pick up the loan for your country on such and such a day. At that point, I would start selling their currency short on a commodity exchange. And what would occur is that when you sell a currency short, there are no buyers, there are only sellers. And everyone would be panicked into selling the currency because we were controlling, we were like the World Bank. That's the analogy I can use. And as I sold the currency short, everyone else followed suit and there were no buyers. And eventually, for example, what I would do is I would buy the currency back just before it went bankrupt, at the bottom. Follow? And in this way, we collapsed currencies. How we would do it is very simple. When we would promise to give them the loan, we would find some excuse not to loan them the money. Meanwhile, we had already taken our position selling the currency short. When we refused the loan, everyone else would start to sell the currency short, and we virtually collapsed the currency.
Wasn't that wrong?
No.
Why not?
Because that was my job. It was not. That was how politics were on Marquette. In fact, Peter Letteries gave me an award, which is hanging up on my wall right there, for doing that. Did you ever see that award?
No.
And I was in Who's Who in Technology Today for collapsing currencies.
There's an actual publication that you have a copy of?
Yeah, that's a legal document.
Okay.
Peter Letteries gave that to me as a gift.
But you said you were in Who's Who of Technology Today.
Today, as a currency collapser.
Do you have a copy of that?
No, but it's available through the Library of Congress.
Well, Who's Who in Technology Today is a Scientology.
No, it was he did that as a reward for an upstat. He entered me in Who's Who in Technology Today because on the whole track I collapsed currencies.
But Technology Today is a Scientology publication.
No, it isn't.
No.
It is not.
It's a WOG publication?
It's a WOG publication.
So then how would they recognize such a thing which wouldn't make any sense to them?
He put me in the magazine, and there's my award.
Have you ever seen it?
I got this award in the mail.
But have you ever seen the magazine?
Not the magazine. It was a book. Yes, I have. In fact, it's in my North Carolina house.
So you have a copy of it?
Yeah, it's somewhere up there.
Okay.
Okay.
In your whole track experience, did you get involved in any events that were fairly common in the whole track experience of other Scientologists?
Oh, yes.
What were some of those?
Well, polishing the same brick on our Slykus.
What was that?
10,000 lifetimes. Have you heard of that?
Well, you've mentioned it, but was that fairly common for Scientologists?
I think so.
That?
I think so, because it was part of our... Where is that... Give me that page for a second. I'll show you.
What's that you're looking at?
Well, I'm particularly referring to a tract map which indicates that. Our Slykus is a place where roads were built in space.
Mm-hmm.
And my job was to polish the same brick for 10,000 lifetimes. After the body would die, they would immediately give me another body. They would keep a body in pawn and give me a new body. In fact, here it says tracts of pieces of body held in pawn. This is a relationship of the Thetan and the genetic entity in this particular
thing. Is our Slykus a place that other Scientologists would be likely to recognize?
Yeah, except they spelled it wrong. Isn't it interesting that on this map, it's, I don't know who wrote this, but they spelled it wrong. They spell it A-R-S-C-L-Y-C-U-S. The correct spelling is A-R-S-L-Y-C-H-U-S.
So our Slykus would be a name that would be recognized by other Scientologists because it was part of the...
It's in here.
Oh, okay. Why don't you read it from the technical dictionary?
Sure. I thought it was. It isn't. It isn't. I thought it was.
But where does it figure in Scientology mythology?
In what?
In Scientology mythology.
Mythology! What a suppressive thing to say.
Okay, what word would you prefer me to use?
Scientological track history.
Okay, in Scientological track history.
Mythology. Oh, boy. Don't do that to me, please.
Okay.
You want me to like you?
In track history.
Okay. Well, here it is. This is a track map, which is not only for me. It's used by Scientology to track incidents. And here it is. This is not.
So Ars Laicus is a place that every Scientologist who had been processed to the level that you had been processed
would have had some interaction with.
Okay. What are some other common place names or common experiences?
Markhab. In fact, here, Markhab, I think, is for sure in here. And needless to say, I didn't look them up because I know them so well. Markhab Confederacy. Okay? Various planets united a very vast civilization which has come up forward through the last 200,000 years. Now, that's wrong, because on my track, it was 4 billion years ago, and it was destroyed by Christ.
Was Markhab a place written about by Hubbard in some of his science fiction writings?
I don't think so.
So do you have any idea how it gets into the dictionary?
Well, because of a lot of... first of all, I'll tell you how. It was on St. Hill Special Briefing Course number 291, which is here. Yeah, I see it. Hold on a moment. It's on a tape called Auditing Com Cycles, Definition of an Auditor, which is St. Hill Special Briefing Course 291, done on the 6th of August, 1963.
And what does Hubbard say about it on that tape?
He said it was a decadent, kicked-in-the-head society with much of the same type of things you see on Earth. In fact, what is the dictionary? It probably has that here. Ah, here it is. It's a sort of a decadent, kicked-in-the-head civilization that contains automobiles, business suits, fedora hats, telephones, spaceships, a civilization which looks almost exactly like a duplicate, but is worse off than the current U.S. civilization. It's right here.
Let me ask you this. Since your time track differs from what is in that book...
Right. Only because the dates are wrong.
How did you come upon your time track? Through the e-meter?
No, through the auditor, through my auditing.
Okay, but did he use the e-meter?
Yeah.
So it was the e-meter that was verifying the time?
Yeah, we went through different interactive cycles where Christ was a part of destroying civilizations that I had lived on. That was the essence of the search.
Did Christ keep coming up in your time track?
No, not at all. He came up once before this time. And that occurred at the very beginning when it's my whole write-up on... This is actually a KR, a knowledge report, this book. And in my chapters of the Holy Book of Life called Creation and Illusion, the first experience I had with Jesus Christ, who suppressed us and trapped us in our physical bodies, is all outlined in the book. All of this data, by the way, in the book, is based on auditing cycles.
Through the e-meter.
Through the e-meter, except I didn't say that in the book because I didn't want people to know that it came from Scientology.
Why?
Because I want them to get the data at the appropriate time. Once they see this book and they know the data, eventually I will come forward and tell them that show them with the meter. For example, when people talk to me later on, after the book is well accepted, I'll bring my meter on television and I'll show them exactly that I was his father.
So all the content of what's in that book are realizations that you had...
Cognitions. Let's use the right terminology.
Sorry. Are cognitions that you had during auditing.
Exactly.
How would you... Can you just describe the process whereby you would arrive at a cognition? Pick one out of there, or just or do a hypothetical, and just describe the process whereby you would come to a cognition and come to recognize the truth of a cognition.
Well, there's many ways to do that. One, of course, is to do the formulas outlined in self-analysis. Here's an easy way. You come up with all the perceptics connected with a mental image picture. And the auditor will ask you, well, what did it smell like on that day? What was it raining? Who was around you? What voices did you hear? And eventually you synthesize everything to do with the mental image picture. You don't just have a visio. You have a visio which is more real than you're sitting in front of the auditor.
But how, for example, would you start out a session, and would the session progress back to the point at which...
Well, the first part of a session is seeing if there's any present time problems,
right,
doing your rudiments, you know.
Right.
And
so you'd be asked if there are any present time problems, there'd be no read on the meter, and you
right,
could go on.
Right.
Right. Then what would happen next?
We would establish goals for the session.
Okay. How would that occur?
Well, the auditor would ask me, what do you wish to accomplish in this session?
And then give me an example of what you might say.
Well, I would say, here's an example. I'd like to find out why I didn't like milk.
Okay, and then what would happen next?
And then we would discuss, the auditor would direct me to view certain incidents in my lifetime regarding somatics on milk.
Okay, so you
we would go to the earliest incident.
All right.
We'd run it like an engram.
Right.
You know.
Okay, so you run it back through this life.
Yeah.
And then would you just go past lives on it?
Yeah.
And...
Because, for example, on milk, my mother once drank milk while she was carrying me. And I vomited in her stomach. I vomited. And I went through the incident vomiting in her stomach.
Well, how did that come to pass?
Okay, let's say you get that cognition and you've got a charge on it on the meter.
Right, I actually vomited again. I was vomiting there. But I was not there. I was in my mother's stomach.
Okay. How would the charge on that cognition be reduced?
I'd have to keep reviewing the incident and re-stimulating it.
Until you no longer got a read on the meter.
Until I no longer had a read, and then we would go to an earlier incident.
And so you would just keep looking for an earlier incident until one occurred.
Yeah.
And then you would
describe like doing fish and fumble.
And then you would describe that incident fully.
Right.
And then you keep reviewing the incident until the charge.
Go to the earliest incident on the track that you could find where there's any charge. And then what we would do is we would do a check. I would go to a past life where I loved milk. See? And that was like a control in scientific terminology. Where I would find a lifetime prior to that where I loved milk. You know. And I would be drinking milk, wasting milk, feeding milk to babies, you know, all the different things you can do with milk. Even a milk enema, you know. And I found that, well, at that time I was fine, you know. That was after the milk issue had been destimulated. So we wanted to make sure it wasn't from an earlier incident. You follow? So that's how it works. And whole track incidents are run the same way. For example, take for example this one. 955 quadrillion years ago, where I smashed a bubble of light. It was a crime. It was an overt act. Because that light was a source of theta. It was a source of pleasure, shall I say in English, for other thetans. And I deliberately smashed a bubble of light and inhibited theta by creating n theta.
This is what I'm trying to understand. How did you come to that realization? You're sitting there. What caused that thought to come?
That thought came from a lifetime where I was blind. And the way I found this incident is to go back to the first time that I had any overts on light. This is how the processes work. Let's say you have a somatic, like an upset stomach or an ulcer. You look for anyone close to you that had an ulcer, like a father or a grandfather or someone. Then you look for the overt act where you harmed that person.
But how do you find it? You're sitting there with an auditor, right?
You review pictures.
You mean
all you're doing when you're auditing is reviewing pictures. You're reviewing mental image pictures that the auditor asks you to look at.
Okay. How does you know which pictures, how do those pictures come about?
The auditor says, what's that picture? He's looking, I'm here with the cans, and the meter is here. I don't see the meter.
Right.
I got the cans in my hand, like so. I always like my needles up. Okay. I have the cans like here, so. And he's saying, let's look at some pictures. And...
Do you close your eyes? How do you...
He's actually going to do this. Okay. You know, he would have been such a great Scientologist if he wasn't a
wog.
This guy, he would have been, you know where he could have gone? He could have been at IT management, this guy. You know?
Okay.
So anyway, I'm looking at pictures. You got it set?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Okay, it's flat. Okay, good. You know what you're doing. Okay. What sensitivity did you use? Oh, okay. Ah! Okay.
Hey, don't second guess me.
I know. I just want to make sure. Because you haven't used the Super 7 yet, you know.
That's right.
And I'm looking at a picture, because this is how I'm holding the cans, you know. And the auditor says to me, look at a picture. For example, right now, I'm thinking of a picture that's unpleasant. Follow?
Yeah.
And I'm getting some charge on it. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what we do is we look at that picture until the charge on it is gone.
But how does the auditor know which picture you're looking at?
He asks me. He said to me, look at a picture of, let's say, well, I'll use the milk example again. Let's say you look at a picture of you drinking the milk that Gabrielle gave you, which was poisoned.
Okay. How does he know to ask that question?
Oh, well, let's say we've gotten to that point. We review an incident, then we look for an earlier incident. He'll say, let's look at an earlier incident. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you...
So he asks you an open-ended question, what do you see, what do you hear? And you come up with an answer of what you see or what you hear?
Right.
And then from there he asks another question?
That's right.
All right.
And he gets the reads, and the auditor directs the show. He directs the session based on what he is reading on the meter.
Why don't you think about the time when Umberto cut your finger, cut your arm? Think about it now.
Okay.
Go back to it.
Yeah.
Can you be there?
I'm there.
What does it feel like?
Painful. Very painful.
Come back to the room.
Okay.
You hear?
Yeah.
Okay, I must have had the settings wrong on there because we're not getting any reaction on the meter.
You're reading me on low, that's why.
Oh, okay.
All right. Put it on what?
Let me
You can only read a person that's... You're reading me on a setting for people that aren't clear.
Trim this down and set it.
Set it the right way.
Okay.
And then we're going to do this again.
I have to do all your work for you, too. All right.
Yeah, I haven't had any training.
Hold on. First of all, you were reading me on low, and you were reading me much too high for that setting.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Like that?
Okay. How are we set now? Are we pretty well set?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay. You can't read a person who's...
See, now it's all the way over. It's down at the end again.
Test.
No, now it's...
Okay.
I was thinking of something. That's all.
What was the thought?
I was saying to myself, God, this is suppressive of you doing this. I was having like, you know, I was having some back off, you know, because of the fact that, you know, I feel like I was betraying the third dynamic of doing this, you know.
Now, what does it mean if the meter is all the way over to the left?
You mean on this side?
Yeah.
On the left side.
Well, that would indicate, a rising needle indicates non-confront.
Meaning untruthfulness?
Yeah, lies, untruthfulness, inability to confront, basically.
Right. And a falling needle?
Truth, flattening it, you know.
Okay.
It's flat. How are we doing here? Okay. Well, it's probably a slight bit off.
What type of question would cause the meter to go up?
How are we now?
Well, we're all the way over to the left.
We are? Then trim it. Set the tone arm a little bit more. The trim, rather. I got a cameraman who's an auditor. That's great. How's it now?
See if you can line it up with the set line.
Yeah, there you go. It's falling down. Oh, there we go. Okay.
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 Got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, what does it take to get you to go exterior at this point?
What does it take to get me to
Yeah.
go exterior?
Yeah, do it.
Don't.
Just do any. Which routine do you want to use? You want to go 3 feet behind the back of your head? Can you go exterior thinking about that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see you go exterior.
Okay. Just leave it.
Where are you?
Here.
Where's here?
Behind the body.
What year is it?
76,613,480,883,885.
Who are you?
Eshimaglopi.
Who's he?
Me.
What's your role in life?
To free Earth.
From what?
From suppression.
By whom?
By suppressives.
Who are the suppressives?
Christ and his chaos merchants and wogs.
Go to another time. Go to the time you were with Umberto. Go to the time Umberto hurt you. What did it feel like when he cut you? Describe it.
He cut the body. Pain.
Can you confront that?
Yes. No, maybe not. Yes. I can.
Okay, come back to the room. Are you in the room?
Which one?
This room?
It doesn't look that solid.
Make the room solid.
Without rest perceptics?
Now come back to the room in this time. Go back in your body. You all right?
Yeah, it just felt so good to be out. Felt so good to be out.
Right.
Stephen.
Yeah.
Why don't you can take that, put that away now.
How were the reads? Was it flattened?
Oh yeah.
Good. So you were reading, let me explain something to you. You were reading on low. That would be for a person who is not clear over here.
Uh-huh.
And if you are clear, you have to read it on high.
When the needle goes all the way to the right, what does that mean?
It reads, it's a flat needle.
Okay,
That means the needle, when the needle is floating, or you flatten the process. When you flatten the process, it goes to the right. When the needle's floating, you go on to the next question too.
Okay. What if
Floating means around the set line, right?
The set line.
Okay. What if it's down to all the way to the left?
You're not confronting something, or you're lying.
Okay. Okay.
This is how court should work. Put a person on the meter, get their OWs, and then the judge can sentence them.
Okay. Stephen, hand me those papers you've got there.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a few questions.
Then you could have only charged me $1.98.
Maybe $2.50. I had been given by you this
whole track check sheet.
whole track check
security check sheet.
That asks a lot of questions. Are
Right.
these the types of questions that you can be asked during an auditing session?
An upper-level auditing session, you wouldn't want to ask that to a person, a new body in the shop.
So in other words, an auditor would sit there asking a person who's undergoing what level?
Well, these questions would typically be used net or above, class 5 or above.
Okay. And the person is hooked up to the meter.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever been asked these questions during an auditing session?
Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't have had the list. The reason why I have the list is because I was co-auditing another PC and they were co-auditing me.
Okay. Like, for example, there's some questions on here I want to ask you if you recall what you discovered from your auditing process. Have you ever enslaved a population?
Yes.
Where was that?
Well, of course, there's different ways to look at it, but I mean, in other words, I'm thinking of different places. But it all depends on how far back you want to go. Demogorgon would be one incident. I actually also freed a population.
Where was that?
From null sweep. It was an incident which is in the book to do with Christ. I freed a population that he enslaved. I mean, I'm not. These questions is a security check sheet. It gets you to confront your OWs, but there's also a very nice part of me that isn't in there. You know.
I understand that. Have you ever? One of the questions here is: have you ever made a planet or nation radioactive? And your answer here is
by
yes.
pulling the air cover.
Where was that?
That was in the Avidalagadrin galaxy. I actually pulled the ozone layer, the air cover off the planet, and everyone died. I was angry. I was at 1.5.
That's 1.5 on the tone scale, right?
Right, exactly. See, you see, my problem is there's so much he doesn't understand.
It's okay. I understand a little bit more anyway. Have you ever denied others a means of existence?
Yes, on Marcab, when I collapsed the currencies. I basically left them without a financial instrument.
Those were pretty serious actions, all of these things. Pulling
Sure.
ozone layers and so on.
I know that. I know that.
Mike, here's another one.
I don't. That's why I don't think people should see all these bad things that I did, because they're going to know how terrible I've been. Why would you want to tell everybody all the overts I've committed? That wouldn't help me.
Well, then, these are the overts that you've committed?
Yeah. I mean, when people hear that I've done that, how much can they possibly think of me?
Okay.
Except that I'm a rotten person.
But it wasn't you, Stephen Fishman, who did these things.
It was the Thetan running this body.
Okay. Have you ever perpetrated an injustice? says yes as long as 12 trillion years.
Right.
What kind of injustice was that?
Well, that was the incident where I put things in Psy's place. And I used to put, I was married and I put my three wives in Psy's place. I was cruel. You know, I carried a policy too far. I think that was a little unjust.
Have you ever made sanity appear to be psychotic? Say sanity in this society is psychotic.
Yeah, it is. Do you know why?
Why?
Because the thing that was interfered with by the Between Lives area is sanity. Anybody that thinks they're a body is insane. I personally think that you are both insane.
You think we're insane?
Absolutely. Because you believe you're a body.
You don't think you're insane?
No. I know I'm not insane. Because I know I'm a spiritual being. But you think you're a body, and that's totally insane. This civilization, people go through lives, they work, they raise a family, and they die. What?
Go ahead.
And they think that this is normal. They think this is normal. They think that that the accumulation of mess, of money and of things is the right is sane. When they don't even want to confront accumulating knowingness. They don't even care where they were before this lifetime. They don't even think they had a past life, a past lifetime. Now, isn't that insane? Don't you? Well, no, you don't. But I think that's totally insane.
Let's just do one more thing. Can we sort of take a tour of this room?
Okay, we're on.
Okay, just pan those small pictures up on the wall there above the window. And while that's going on, Stephen, why don't you tell me just generally what those pictures represent?
Well, they're scenes from L. Ron Hubbard's Decology called Mission Earth, which is a science fiction series based on the whole track.
Okay, so that although it was written as science fiction and many people would think of it as science fiction, actually it is true
from
history.
Circumstances, yes, exactly.
True history.
L. Ron Hubbard's time track.
Okay. So it's actually a report of something that was true,
yeah,
but is believed by the uninformed.
By the wogs.
To be science fiction. Okay.
Yes.
Behind you are a number of posters. The first one on the right, does that one have anything to do with Scientology? All the way on the right.
This is a picture of the Thetan, which was created by Sun Saray, who is that person that Mark mentioned before.
Okay.
Who turned squirrel later on.
Is that an accepted picture of a Thetan, or was that her interpretation?
Both, because it was a Thetan doesn't really have any form or wavelength or matter, energy, space, or time, but this is her interpretation of what a Thetan mocking up a doll body looks like. You know what a doll body is?
No.
Okay. A doll body is like a robot body, which we used to use prior to the physical body. Okay.
I'm just curious, down below the copy machine, right by your leg, there seemed to be a collection of videotape.
No, they're my favorite television show, Pee Wee Herman's Playhouse.
So you have, what, a collection of maybe 20 or 30?
Yeah, and then I have my hat packs from Scientology on the bottom.
So you got 20 or 30 videotapes of Pee Wee Herman, and,
right,
and then underneath that,
I've got hat packs
of Scientology hat packs.
Yeah, for example, here's one.
And those are all hat packs.
Here's the Director of Registration, Volume 2.
Okay.
Tells you exactly what your post would be.
Roughly, how much would you have paid for that?
$60.
Okay. And would those be the same HCOs that would be in some of the bound volumes?
But they're in a different sequence, so that's why
organized into the hat pack.
Right, exactly.
So you might pay $60 for a volume of that size, and then pay how much for each of the volumes of the collected HCO memos?
Well, the $100 for each of those.
Okay. All right, let's go to the the next poster over, rocket your case progress with the new OT.
This relates to OT4, the level of OT4, which is the end of endless drug rundowns.
Ah, okay. So an OT drug rundown is finally going to get rid of all the drug effects that anybody's ever had?
Exactly. You do that after you do the wall of fire.
Okay. Well, that would include prescription drugs and all forms of pharmaceuticals as well as illicit drugs, right?
Exactly, even including MSG. MSG is a drug.
So basically, to complete the drug rundown, you would have to recontact each instance in
your entire time track
in which you had
any experience or contact or connection with any drug.
So running back over 76 trillion years,
right,
you would have to audit out
every one.
Every time you took an aspirin, every time.
Exactly.
That could take a while.
Well, you do them as locks.
Oh, so you do bunches at a time.
You do bunches of aspirins at a time and bunches of whatever, you know.
Okay.
There are a lot of drugs that you may not even be aware of because they're not of this planet.
Okay. The last cars on Earth before World War III.
Right.
Is that a Scientology-related poster?
Yeah, I put the poster together because what I did is I got the 1997 is the last year we're going to be here unless I can do something to save the planet.
Okay, the year 1997, is that your insight or is that commonly accepted within the Scientology community?
I don't know how commonly accepted it is, but it's part of my auditing cycle.
So it's at least your auditing cycle?
Of course it is. But it may not be, it may be too confidential for a lot of people to know about.
Okay, and you don't know that's a widely held belief with.
Well, I know it's widely held because I discussed it with some Scientology execs.
Uh-huh. And how did they react to it?
They were aware. They were well aware of it. When I went to L.A. and I spoke to the senior chaplain out in AOLA, her last name was Holwedel, I think, Holwedel. She was totally aware of it, and I don't even think she had my PC folder.
Okay, so was she aware of it because it's something that many people recognize?
Probably, on the upper levels.
Oh, okay. What's that little poster?
This is my favorite planet, Gandalupia.
Where did that poster come from?
I saw this in a magazine, and I remembered this place. And I took it to Fred Hare, and I said, you see this picture? It's Gandalupia. This is the crystal planet where all of the water was crystalline. And I actually mocked this planet up. And Fred admitted that he had seen this as well. So he said, we'll frame that. Let's frame that, you know.
Okay. The next poster over, the one with the rather unhappy-looking face.
Well, Joe Spencer painted this. It's also from Mission Earth. And it's called Death of a Tolnap, which has to do with an incident in the book where a suppressive being, this is what a suppressive looks like, was destroyed. And, well, this is a very important thing.
That's the ethics conditions.
These are the ethics conditions. You're always in one of them. You as a Thetan cannot be out of this chart. You're in the chart somewhere. Up until the time that this whole mess happened, I was right here in power. Power is a normal in a stellar range so high that it is total abundance. I was actually so close to doing what I was supposed to do.
What was the lowest ethics condition you ever got in before this all started?
I mean, before
the arrest, for example.
I was an emergency orphan, but I don't think I was never in a lower condition than emergency.
What sort of things would you get into emergency for?
Well, when my stats were repeatedly down.
Stats on what?
Bringing in money, not enough cases, not enough auditing hours.
What would be your what would you have to do to work your way out of that condition?
Well, you have to, in order to be out of emergency, what you have to do is you have to do the emergency formula, which is you have to economize and then you have to deliver. In other words, at that point, you would have to do something over and above your normal routines in order to get back in the good graces of the org.
Okay. The next poster over, the one, get the fabulous flag rundowns, L10, L11,
Being
L12.
this, doing this, and having this.
Okay. And those are all separate?
Separate actions which I was going to be able to do by the end of this year. In fact,
what would the phrase "have more you in present time to cause the things you want" translate to if you wanted
to talk to a WOG?
To talk to a WOG.
Have less of the past or the future or distraction. Have less bank, reactive bank.
Be more at cause?
Be more at cause. Be at cause, not more at cause.
Okay.
You can't be. You have to be at cause. You operate by postulates. You don't operate by effect. In other words, you're right at 20.0.
Okay. So
action. You're in
to
action.
cause the things you want, what would be the sorts of things that people might want?
To be free. To be free of this physical body. To be free of this stupid, screwed up universe. To be able to just operate as a Thetan, like we used to be able to do. To build our own universe.
So there's really only one thing that people want, and the want is to become a Thetan.
Yeah. No, we are a Thetan.
Well, okay, but to have...
But to be able to operate as a Thetan. Exactly.
So, is that do you think that's your unique meaning to that phrase, or might other people want some other things? So might people want some material things?
Well, if they're very low on the no to mystery scale.
But if they were at the point at which they could take L10 through L12...
They would not want material things.
So
if anybody that's taking L10, 11, and 12 will get rid of their material things to do the action.
So then it would be your opinion that there's really only one interpretation...
To be free.
For the things that you want.
To go to the top of the grade chart. That's what I want.
Okay, but that would also be what anybody who might be
But I also want to clear the planet. I also not only want to be on the top of the grade chart, I want to wear my hat as a Thetan. So, fine, even if I can't go to the top of the grade chart and be free, I will be free by wearing my hat.
Okay. But as you see
Because if you clear half of the planet, how could you not go to the top of the grade chart?
Okay.
I mean, Ron will even bring me there.
Okay. But as you see it,
yeah.
There isn't any room really for anyone else who would be at a point at which they could take L10 or 11 or 12 to want anything other than the full awakening of their Thetan powers.
What else is there?
That's all I wanted to know. What's the next one over?
Palace City?
No, the one underneath.
Oh, this is a quote from RJ35, Ron's journal, which is a cassette, which he gave at the beginning of, I think it was 1980 or 81. And it says, in all the broad universe, there is no hope for man other than ourselves. This is a tremendous responsibility. I, meaning Ron, have borne it myself too long.
Ourselves means collectively all Scientologists?
I have borne it myself too long. Myself.
But ourselves would mean Scientology as a group?
Yeah, Scientology, the third dynamic.
And the responsibility is really to save mankind?
To set man free.
Okay.
To set Theta free.
Right. What's the next one over?
Palace City. I'll go over there, I guess. Palace City was the first print I ever bought from Bridge Publications. Now it's handled by another org called Author Services.
Mm-hmm.
But this represents a city in space in the Mission Earth series.
Okay. Now, looking at the next column,
yes,
presumably the first one is irrelevant.
That's my that's what I call my ex-wife's grandmother, but it isn't.
Okay. So who's who in technology today?
Yeah.
Now that is an actual award that you received, the
right.
nomination for which was done by
Peter Letteries.
And
but there's a lot of silly stuff in there.
Okay, but
they relate to my time track, but they have nothing to do with technology in this.
But Technology Today is a real magazine.
Yeah, it's a book actually.
Okay. The next one down.
Squirrel.
Just a generic squirrel.
It's a squirrel picture from that I got at the Light Center in North Carolina. Nothing to do with Scientology. I just think it's cute.
Oh. So
this is a squirrel type picture. It's just like a mythological picture, like you're using your word.
Okay. So when you said squirrel, it means
it's not Scientology.
Oh, that's all. Okay. And the next is your children, obviously.
Children.
And then on top there, is that also not related?
Yeah, it's painting I like to get, and this is another. This is the girl that I always loved, because this is what the Virgin Mary looked like. This is Christ's mother.
Are you sure of that?
Yeah, she looked, well, there's a little bit of a difference because of the way the hair was, but this is the closest picture I've ever seen to what she looked like. So now you know why I was so attracted to her.
Understandable.
Okay.
Reasons to get trained.
Very important. This is important. There are 71 reasons why a person should go up the left side of the bridge. And I could spend 2 hours explaining them to you, but know these.
Okay. Then I presume those are a couple of photographs of your family or someone.
No, what, this?
Yeah.
No. This is the cast of Falcon Crest in Dallas.
Oh. What can you do? All right. Let's skip the other one.
This is my favorite picture I have in the house. This picture is Dream Flight. And this is a scene. This is a scene painted by Frank Frazetta. And it's from Ron's, not from Mission Earth, this is from Writers of the Future. It's the only book that I don't own of Ron's. I don't have that book. The reason why is because it was supposed to be in hardback, and I didn't want the... Oh, you picked up the copy of the Hebrew Dianetics book. They have in Oregon, Tel Aviv, by the way.
Okay, and then the one above that?
The one above this is from Mission Earth Volume 2. This is Black Genesis, Fortress of Evil.
Okay. Then
by the way, my number is 224. That's on all these pictures. I've been assigned 224 by the Sea Org. Yeah, that's my number, 224 on there. They didn't have a 224 for that one, so they gave me 13. I was the 13th person to buy that picture.
Okay. I see on the counter there's another e-meter.
That's not an e-meter. That's a learning accelerator.
Oh, okay.
That helps you reinforce things. That's almost like a brainwashing machine. It would help you remember things, except it doesn't use pain.
Well, how does that work?
Well, you pick up the cans and you don't have anyone audit you. This is used to reinforce an idea. In other words, if you're weak in a certain area, it's mainly used to apply ethics conditions.
How would that be done?
Similar to an e-meter. You know what? It has to be charged.
Well, don't worry about it. Just describe it to me. I mean,
okay.
Tell me about how it functions.
Okay. You set your balance just like you would have it set. Okay. And
wait, let me clarify my point. Tell me what it's used to accomplish.
Oh, what it's used to accomplish. Okay. For method word clearing. In other words, or handling ethics conditions, it's good for that too. In other words, when you want to see whether you've remembered something, you continuously check your reads as you're learning something, and if your read shows decrease, you have to study it again.
Oh, okay. Now these two bookcases are...
Yeah, I need to put the dictionary back so it looks nice.
I'll get the dictionary for you.
Okay. I can see where you were here.
Here you are.
You touched it, I could tell. All right. This is my Scientology book and cassette library. I have some videotapes also given by Ron here, which are from the 1958 Washington 4th of July Freedom Clearing Congress, in which he tells you how to clear people. These are very good videotapes, which are given by Ron.
Now, down the hallway there towards the door, there are a number of other posters about being an operating Thetan.
The bottom three are the important ones.
Okay.
Because those are from the Flag World Tours. The first one is advertising the Flag World Tour with a display. They have different speakers talking about different things you can do at Flag. The second one is for OT5, Second Wall of Fire, and the first poster is for OT1.
Okay. And the iconograph?
No, nothing. That's junk.
Okay, and what about Poverty Sucks? Is that just a general
One, something my ex-wife left me.
This is a general statement.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the keyboard up to the right on the...
Oh, my first computer. For sentimental reasons, I couldn't throw it away.
Ah.
See?
Okay.
And, of course, here's a picture of L. Ron Hubbard.
Right.
In front of St. Hill. And just some funny picture I framed, and a zebra that's a Scottish zebra, which is funny.
Okay.
And matches, and that's lunch money up there.
All right, and then we have a poster for knots.
OT5, a small poster. And this is just a nice Petri print about the end of the world when everybody was walking into the sea. It has nothing to do with Scientology. My New York subway map. Here's a very important thing. It's the evaluator's know-how chart. And it tells you how to find a negative situation and what to look for in order to do a handling on it.
Okay, now, in the kitchen behind you,
there's
a poster on the tone scale.
Right. And picture of Pee Wee Herman.
Right. And
the money tapes.
Okay, now, what particular tapes does that poster refer to?
These tapes tell you how to be a success as far as accumulating mess. They tell you Ron tells you the definition of money, the 5 conditions which are expressed there. There's actually more than 5, and also how to organize an org. So it really tells you how to set up an organization and run one and be successful.
Okay. And then I see here we've got a...
These are my favorite tapes right here. The time track of theta. They're wonderful. And they give you a little booklet with them, some of which was written in Ron's own writing, explaining some of the things in the tapes. And they show a relationship between the genetic line and the theta line. See? There's tapes behind here. There's 4 of them. Best tape of all is number 3, History of the Theta Line. If you haven't heard that, you should. Of course, there's a tape called the Between Lives area that is very interesting, too. That's St. Hill Special Briefing Course tape number 288.
Okay, now I see back on this wall, that looks like a German language posters for flag.
It's actually Dutch.
Dutch? Okay.
And just some pretty pictures I've collected over the years.
Okay. Now, back behind you, now that's another E-meter, the blue.
That's my old one. That's the standard Mark 6.
And how much was that one when you bought it?
2,000. Got that, I forget, back in, I don't know, 80 something.
Okay.